Introduction. The clash of titans, the roar of dragons, the curses of sorcerers, and the resplendent light of magic illuminates the beacon of knowledge. Chapter 1. Jason. Removing the gilded armor, clearing the clutter from the table, breaking the wax seal, and unfolding the envelope, Jason beheld the contents of the letter under the flickering candlelight. Dear Jason Lannister, it has been a long time. She always insisted on calling me by my full name, Jason mused. I have received your letter. It has been 3 years since our last parting. However, the surprise you gave me remains unforgettable. It is hard to imagine that the frail little lion I once knew has transformed into a true Lannister. You must be taller now. I look forward to our reunion. I shall also attend this tournament. The Bachelor has assured me that this could be the grandest tournament in a century, with the highest prizes. Additionally, I bring you an unexpected surprise. As I was uncertain of your departure, I entrusted the Bachelor with this letter to be delivered to Harrenhal. By the time you read this, I should have arrived. Yours, your marriage organizer, Elia Martell. A surprise? Could it be Asher Dane? It seems so. It has been 3 years since our last encounter, and it appears my fiancée will be present as well. Jason set the letter aside, yet his heart was heavy with apprehension. He was not a native of this world. Since birth, he bore a lifetime of memories more than others. In that recollection, he was known as Zhang Jie, often teased by classmates for sharing a name with a celebrity. In truth, he had only attended primary and middle school, spending the rest of his time in hospitals. From that memory, he realized he had traversed realms, entering the world of a Game of Thrones. While there were differences, the general framework remained consistent. Familiar names, families, and locations from the show existed in reality. It appeared that the timeline was slightly earlier than the series, with the Mad King still seated upon the Iron Throne. If his memories were accurate, then Elia Martell's future was perilous. Though he was a variable, renowned as Tywin's son, he was still unfamiliar with the plot. The series had not depicted the events of the War of the Usurper, and while he had a vague understanding of the war's causes and its connection to the tournament, he was oblivious to when the war would begin and end. If only he had read the novels. Perhaps they would have provided more depth and detail. His recollections of the series remained sharp, and perhaps this clarity was one of his advantages. In his previous life, he was frail and ailing, enduring years of medication, eventually leaving behind his parents and siblings. Upon being reborn into this world as Tywin's third child, his initial joy far outweighed the sorrow of leaving his family. Yet, the gods played a cruel jest. He still required medication in this life, and Maester Cregan once feared Jason would not survive. Nevertheless, he persevered, having long grown accustomed to such tribulations. Amidst his suffering, he celebrated his 7th naming day, essentially his birthday, as naming days were termed in Westeros. On that day, he encountered Elia and her brother Oberyn, who were traveling from Dorne. At 15, nearing adulthood, her exquisite beauty left an indelible impression on Jason. Yet, beauty often comes at a cost. She mentioned that her mother had given birth to her a month prematurely, resulting in her own frail constitution. Perhaps this shared plight was why she treated Jason with such unusual tenderness and patience. Or perhaps it was simply her nature. She reminded him of his mothers, his first mother, Liao Maoshue, and his second, Joanna, both of whom were no longer by his side. He had lost the first, only to have the second taken from him as well. Tyrion's birth claimed Joanna's life, but he bore no resentment. He had known this fate long before and felt powerless to change it. Could he not alter Elia's destiny? No. The gods had granted him liberation from illness and bestowed upon him this robust physique. He must take action. Someone approached. The scent was Sir Adam. Upon sensing his presence, Jason rose and opened the door, encountering Sir Adam, who was about to knock. Adam Malbrun, now 18, was currently serving as Jason's squire. Jason was participating in the tournament in this capacity. The melee was for groups, while the jousting belonged to the honor of knights. Tournament rules varied each time, but at least this was the case for the current event. This was yet another aspect I could not change. If memory served correctly, Rhaegar Targaryen would present the Queen of Love and Beauty to Lyanna Stark here. If only I could join the joust, I could defeat him and put an end to this farce, albeit perhaps only temporarily. Jason, are you planning to go out? Not at all, Sir Adam. I merely heard footsteps and opened the door to check. By the way, is there something you need at this late hour? Oh, I happened to pass by and wanted to inform you that I have spoken with Lord Hightower regarding your request. He mentioned he has a fine greatsword he would be willing to lend to the Lion of Lannister. You can check the armory tomorrow. It is located beneath the barracks hall. Thank you very much, Sir Adam, Jason replied, sensing there was another matter prompting Adam's visit. Indeed, Adam smiled. We need not exchange pleasantries. Has Jaime mentioned when he will arrive? I saw you receive a letter from the maester today. I hear he is also a knight now. In truth, he was now considered a Kingsguard, but the ceremony had yet to commence. Jason chose not to disclose this news to Adam. Were he to learn that Jason was the heir of Casterly Rock, he would likely treat him with even greater deference, and Jason would become the least squire-like squire imaginable. His father surely would not wish for him to flaunt his identity in such a manner. The letter did not come from Jaime, but in just one day, the tournament will commence. He has just been knighted. I doubt he will pass up this splendid opportunity. I would wager you are correct. Well then, rest well. That bear ought to have exerted some effort on you today. I shall not disturb you further. You as well, sir. After bidding farewell to Adam, Jason returned to the table, organizing the letter and briefly tending to his armor, which bore a scratch from a bear's claw. He had heard of the abundance of bears around Harrenhal. Lord Hightower had even organized a bear hunting party, for the tournament was approaching, and it would not do to frighten the knights, merchants, and nobles passing through. As it turned out, a single bear hunting party was far from sufficient. Just that morning, as Jason and Sir Adam departed from the town of Lord Harlaw, heading towards Harrenhal along the King's Road, they encountered a bear. It was Jason's first encounter with the scent of a bear. Before he could identify the species, a roar erupted, and it charged from the thicket, lunging fiercely at Jason. Fearlessly, Jason drew his sword. The horse was uncooperative, and before being thrown off, he had no choice but to leap down. Amidst the gasps of onlookers, Jason rolled away from the initial strike. However, the claw still tore through his outer garment and left marks on his armor. As the second claw swiped at him, Jason raised his left hand to deflect it, while his right hand swiftly plunged his sword into the bear's throat, twisting it fiercely. Before the bear's corpse fell, he pushed it away in a seamless motion. Aside from Adam and his guards, the other merchants from the Westerlands were left speechless. What they had anticipated to be a disaster had been effortlessly resolved by Jason. Though rumors circulated throughout the Seven Kingdoms that Tywin's 4 children monopolized all adjectives, 2 were tall and handsome, the 3rd frail and weak, and the 4th short and ugly. Initially, this was the consensus. However, perhaps the gods soon realized that no punishment could compare to having a hideous dwarf child who had caused the death of his own mother. Thus, after Tyrion's birth, the gods restored Jason's health. Some assert that Jason Lannister not only regained his health, but also acquired divine powers. Perhaps he was inherently extraordinary, yet the gods deemed it unwise to bestow supreme strength upon an infant, for such a gift might overwhelm the child. Thus, the 7 gods dedicated 7 named days to gradually confer upon him health and divine might. There are those who speculate that the blessing granted to the 3rd son was the reason the 4th son became a dwarf. You see, the gods do indeed value balance. Such tales circulate widely, and while many are aware, it is clear that not all have witnessed the might of the 7 gods, nor do all believe in this phenomenon. However, today, at least a few more have come to accept it. It was a young female brown bear, weighing an estimated 400 to 500 pounds. From being frail and sickly, Jason found himself endowed with immense strength and agility, the reasons for which eluded him. Having traversed to this realm, perhaps the gods truly possess celestial means to send him forth and grant him a golden touch. Yet, based on the narrative of the series, Jason preferred to believe that it was the King of Light who had bestowed upon him this unparalleled power. Beyond this, did any other extraordinary events transpire on my 7th named day? Indeed, they did. That day, I encountered Elia Martell. Chapter 2. The Keep of Harrenhal. What is this cold sensation? Where am I lying? Jason struggled to open his eyes, but to no avail. All he could do was listen to the sound around him, inhale the scents wafting through the air, and even moving a finger felt like an extravagant wish. Is this a nightmare? Have I reverted to being the helpless Zhang Jie? Let us begin, he suddenly heard someone proclaim. There were many people surrounding him, most of them situated above. What were they doing? Before he could ponder further, Jason sensed himself sinking, submerged in water, a violent stinging coursing through his body. He thrashed violently, yet could not break free. He finally cried out, at which point an even sharper pain shot through his arm. Jason jolted awake, striving to comprehend his surroundings, only to find himself in a bedroom within Harrenhal. The icy sensation had vanished, replaced by warmth. This harsh winter had endured for nearly 2 years. Now the ice and snow were melting, trees were regaining their verdure, and days were lengthening. Although the scholar of the old town had yet to announce the arrival of spring, Most believed that winter was on the brink of conclusion. Approaching the window, Jason discovered that daylight had broken, and under the sun, his arms appeared perfectly normal, leaving him astonished by the vividness of the dream's agony. Harrenhal was grand and imposing, yet many areas remained cold and damp. Fortunately, Jason's chamber was in the Tower of the Burning King, the residence of a lord, frequently maintained and thus relatively pleasant. The kitchen below had begun bustling with activity, and knights and servants were entering and exiting the widow's tower nearby. In truth, he ought to be residing there. Yet, evidently, the identity of the former prime minister's son and the bear carcass, which had been dismembered and carted by merchants, had played their roles. The bear hunter, they referred to him. Dressed in his armored attire, Jason descended the tower and entered the Hall of 100 Fires. Despite its name, there were only 35 hearths, rumored to be capable of accommodating an entire army. The floor was laid with smooth stone slabs, with staircases leading to 2 corridors above. Numerous servants were busy inserting candles and arranging tables and barrels. Tomorrow marked the opening ceremony of the tournament, and today most nobles would be in attendance, preparing the hall for the banquet. A servant approached him. "My lord, what would you like for breakfast?" "No need for fuss. Whatever is available will suffice. I must be late. And another thing, I am not a lord. Also, could you fetch me some of the wine from that barrel?" "What kind is it?" Jason inquired, pointing to the barrel the servant had set down. "That is mead. As you wish," the servant replied, bowing slightly before turning to instruct others to fetch breakfast, while he took it upon himself to retrieve the wine. Breakfast consisted of bacon, bread, 2 boiled eggs, 2 roasted sausages, an apple, and a portion of honey bear paw, all provided to Jason by the Earl of Riverlands, who insisted that the bear paw was entirely his bounty. "This is his trophy," he declared, and Jason had no choice but to accept it. Although he had not intended to eat this in the morning, he had made no requests, and now he was indeed hungry. The surrounding servants, having witnessed the previous night's feast, had grown accustomed to the appetite of this 13-year-old lion cub. "The mouth of the lion resides in Casterly Rock, as does the Lannister name," they remarked behind his back, but Jason could hear them. The mouth of the lion was the primary entrance to Casterly Rock, a vast natural cavern towering 200 feet from bottom to top. For centuries, it had been widened and improved, allowing 20 horses to pass side by side beneath the lion's mouth into Casterly Rock. After finishing his meal, Jason departed the Hall of 100 Fires, retrieved the 2-handed sword gifted by the Earl from the armory, and made his way to the Weeping Tower adjacent to the stone courtyard. The lower level of the Weeping Tower housed storage rooms, and thus was filled with servants transporting candles and other items. The stone courtyard was where soldiers and knights practiced their skills, and their squires maintained weapons and armor. The ground was uneven, featuring a closed corridor above the courtyard, along with an archway directly facing it. "Jason, you are late today. You cannot afford to be so in the coming days, especially tomorrow," a departing middle-aged man remarked upon seeing him. "My sincerest apologies. I shall do my best." "Uncle Kevin, when did you arrive?" Sir Kevin appeared somewhat portly, with thinning hair and a fleshy square jaw adorned with a neatly trimmed beard. His skin was fair, and his hair and beard were golden. At 37 years of age, he was in the prime of life. "I just arrived, Jason. You must learn to rise early. Your father informed me that the king would be attending. I never thought he would finally leave the Red Keep. However, this may not bode well for us," Kevin whispered closely. Jason could only respond formally. "I will, I promise." "Very well, I believe in you. Off you go. Adam has been waiting for you for quite some time." "I must take my leave to rest," Kevin said before departing. The Mad King and Tywin had once been friends, yet now they had become estranged. Kevin's arrival without Tywin suggested that his father had intentionally avoided the Mad King. With the Mad King now out of his cell, it was likely he would create difficulties for Jason, and he could not afford to falter at such a critical juncture. "Sir Adam, my apologies for keeping you waiting." "Let us commence," Jason said after another squire helped him don his armor, twirling the 2-handed sword as he approached Adam. This sword resembled a flat iron plate shaped like a sword, lacking a tip or edge, and was thick in body. Its purpose was solely for convenience during practice with Adam. "You have finally arrived. The old custom remains," Adam declared, immediately raising his sword and adopting a stance known as the anger form. The so-called old custom dictated that Adam would attack while Jason would defend. Due to the divine power, Jason's strength often proved overwhelming for others to withstand. Coupled with Jason's agility, evading his strikes during combat was exceedingly difficult. Thus, he could only adopt a defensive posture, which often proved insufficient. Therefore, during their sparring sessions, Jason consistently assumed a defensive role. While some might have been willing to challenge him in practice, the impending tournament meant he could not risk being unable to compete due to training injuries. As Adam swung his sword, Jason raised his blade to block, redirecting the incoming strike to the side before settling into position for the next attack. Adam had grown accustomed to this rhythm, smoothly drawing his sword back to his shoulder before executing a powerful thrust. Jason countered by sweeping his sword to deflect the incoming longsword. This strike had more force behind it, nearly causing Adam to lose his balance. Adam regained his composure. He exhaled deeply. Observing Jason's relaxed posture, sword in hand, he curiously inquired, "Have you ever sparred with James? Or perhaps with the mountain?" It is best not to refer to him as the mountain in front of Rhaegar. Adam, a familiar voice interrupted Jason. Turning around, he discovered it was James. Tall and striking, with flowing golden hair, he possessed brilliant blue eyes and a smile as sharp as a blade, bearing a resemblance to Jason. Jason lowered his two-handed sword, extending his arms to embrace James. "It has been far too long. I have heard of your remarkable achievements in the Kingsguard. Indeed, I have just witnessed your battle. Had you been present last time, you would certainly have earned accolades. Sir Arthur would undoubtedly have knighted you. He has long wished to meet the one betrothed to his sister and has been inquiring about you." I assured him he would not be disappointed. James chuckled, patting Jason on the shoulder. "Since you are here, Sir Arthur and the king should have arrived as well," Adam remarked. "Certainly. We should hasten to the castle gates to greet them," James replied, wrapping an arm around Jason's shoulders. "The king wishes to see you, and you know how our father's relationship with the king can be, combined with the king's volatile temperament. You must temper your disposition." "I understand." As James, Jason, and their companions exited the Lucier courtyard, they found the courtyard beneath the gate teeming with people. Yet, the atmosphere was far from festive, as the crowd emitted restrained gasps of astonishment. This was due to one singular event. Their king was disembarking from the Sun Chariot, a grand double-decker carriage crafted from polished oak and adorned with gilded metal trimmings, drawn by 40 magnificent steeds. However, the people's astonishment stemmed from the appearance of King Aerys Targaryen II, whose long yellowed nails, tangled beard, and unkempt, rope-like hair revealed his madness to the world. Oblivious to the murmurs around him, the king, with the assistance of the captain of the Kingsguard, White Bull Juro Hightower, steadied himself and turned his serious gaze toward Jason and James, demanding, "Who is Jason Lannister?" Chapter 3. "The night I am here, Your Majesty," Jason announced loudly, stepping forward to where the king stood flanked by 6 silent Kingsguard, their unwavering gazes fixed upon him. "What are your commands, Your Majesty?" Jason exerted every effort to maintain a neutral expression, suppressing any hint of disdain. The king's odor was unbearable. Even the copious amounts of perfume he wore could not mask it. The stench was so overwhelming that it would surely discomfort even those with less sensitive noses. Observing the Kingsguard at the king's side, Jason felt a genuine admiration. Is this truly my king? An unusual silence enveloped the gathering, and James, witnessing the scene, felt a twinge of embarrassment. He had brought his brother to meet the king, never anticipating that the monarch would summon him directly in such an informal manner. Shouldn't such an audience wait until the ceremony had concluded? Moreover, this summons resembled a public rebuke. Kayvon had also approached James, having just been informed of the king's arrival, and thus was compelled to follow the crowd to this location. The noblemen and knights at the city gates were so numerous that they were beyond counting. Banners fluttered in abundance, including those of the tournament's organizers, the yellow flags adorned with 9 bats, and the king's 3-headed dragon banner. There were also the red banners of House Lannister, depicting the roaring golden lion alongside the sigils of the North's dire wolf, the Vale's eagle, the Riverland's trout, the Reach's golden rose, and the Stormland's crowned stag. Excluding the Dornish banner of the Sun Piercer, all 6 great houses were represented, not to mention the myriad lesser nobles, the burning tree, the unicorn, the blue sun on gold, the lizard lion, the flayed man, the chainmail giant, the twin towers by the river, the silver seahorse, the red and white griffin, the sword and meteor, the green dragon on gold, the 3 crows bearing hearts, the towering spire, the green-clad hunter in red, and the red gold fox. Yet, all were compelled to remain beneath the gatehouse. Kayvon cast a worried glance at the Lannisters, who were surrounded by the throng. Jason lost track of time. Aerys remained silent, his gaze fixated on Jason as though the Lannister bore a rare treasure from the 7 kingdoms. Finally, as some nobles began to depart from this farcical ceremony, Aerys spoke. "You do not resemble him much. You bear a closer resemblance to her." He suddenly smiled. Jason furrowed his brow, disliking the king's mention of his mother, a subject steeped in past rumors. Patience, Jason Lannister, Aerys advised. A true man knows when to yield. Be patient, especially with your eyes and nose. It is a pity, though, your gaze is unlike hers, more reminiscent of my former hand. He paused, then quickly added with a laugh, I forget, your father is no longer hand. Owen, forgive me, my memory has waned. The current hand of the king, Owen Martell, stepped forward to express understanding, his smile strained. How could Aerys be so oblivious to the nuances of conversation? Jason sensed the gazes around him were devoid of respect, filled instead with fear, disdain, and anger. Perhaps he had long recognized this, which might explain his deliberate estrangement from his capable son. Is this truly my king? Where is Tywin? The prize for this tournament exceeds even the one he hosted 4 years ago, doubling the stakes. Could it be that he is too ashamed to participate? If my father were present, how dare you speak so arrogantly? Your Majesty, my father resigned from the position of Prime Minister a month ago due to ill health and has since returned to Caon City for recuperation, where he is yet to recover. Thus, he is unable to attend the tournament. After Jason spoke, he turned to Count Hien and remarked that the prize money set by Count Hien is indeed substantial, and the wealth of the Hien family is truly rare among the 7 kingdoms. To be candid, I seek to learn from the esteemed Count about financial management. Inevitably, murmurs arose from the crowd. In truth, most had either noticed or believed that Count Hien's wealth alone could not sustain such a grand tournament. Some were convinced that there were other benefactors behind the scenes, who would be willing to invest such vast sums to gather the nobility of the 7 kingdoms. Jason himself was unsure. However, ever since the turmoil in Magoo Town, the reticent Aerys had arrived here, likely sensing something amiss. Furthermore, Jason had heard Cersei mention that Aerys was accompanied by a eunuch named Varys, known as the Master of Spies in the television series. Count Walter Hien quickly stepped forward to express his gratitude for the praise, yet when it comes to wealth, none dare to rival the Lannisters. I established this tournament not only to celebrate the impending end of the harsh winter that has lasted 2 years, but also to secure a marriage for my daughter. I am grateful to all the lords and knights for attending. Shall we not retreat inside to rest? The banquet will commence tonight. Ah, truly a Lannister. Joanna has borne a fine son. You surpass Jaime, without a doubt. Ha. This mad Targaryen interrupted Walter and caused those preparing to enter the city to freeze in place. Alas, my Lyra is not as prolific as Joanna. This madman laughed before sighing. Yet, his words struck like a thunderclap, reminding everyone of the past rumors surrounding Aerys Targaryen and Joanna Lannister. Those ghastly rumors. I ought to slay this madman, right now? I should charge forth and strike down the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Sir Barristan Selmy, Sir Oswell Hien, my fiancé's brother, the Dawnbringer Sir Arthur Dayne, the fearless Ser Balon Swan, Prince Lewin Martell, Sir John Derry, seize any of their swords, and then behead this madman, watching him falter in uttering his mother's name. I should have acted thus, but I might perish as a consequence. The Dawnbringer could very well strike my head off first. The tales say his swordsmanship is unmatched, and his double-handed sword forged from meteorite steel is as hard and sharp as Valyrian steel. Can my divine strength contend with these legendary knights? I do not know. Patience. Jason Lannister, patience. Your Majesty, I must respectfully disagree. My brothers and I do not measure up to Prince Rhaegar Targaryen in the slightest. Surely, Prince Rhaegar will become the wisest king in the future, as the 7 kingdoms are well aware. Jason was uncertain of his current expression, but the furrowed brow of Sir Arthur across from him and the grip of the Kingsguard on their sword hilts indicated that his intentions were likely far from benevolent. The smile of House Targaryen had completely vanished. He wished to clench his fists but found his long nails a hindrance, leaving him to glare fiercely instead. Observing this reaction, Jason felt he could almost ascertain the identity of the hidden patron behind this tournament. Should he lose his composure, he would have no choice but to invoke trial by combat or risk becoming an assassin. The distinction lay solely in whether he faced a noble knight or 6 desperate foes. Are you a knight? The madman inquired. No, I am still Sir Adam Marbrand, squire. Jason replied. The madman disregarded the rudeness in Jason's words and continued. I have heard others say you are favored by the 7, endowed with health and divine might. Even if such tales are embellished, you must possess remarkable skills. You are also betrothed to the Dane family, correct? Oh, you have done your research well for the heir of Casterly Rock, Jason responded, his tone devoid of courtesy. Sir Arthur Dayne, draw your divine sword. At your command. Your grace. Sir Arthur Dayne hesitated not, donning the Kingsguard helm that had been tucked under his arm, then unsheathing his sword and stepping forward to take his stance. The dawn, the sword of legend, gleamed brilliantly in the sunlight, outshining even the spring day. Aegon II Targaryen, king of the Undulls, the Rhoynar, and the First Men, ruler of the Seven Kingdoms and protector of the realm, extended his yellowed, long-nailed arm, pointing at the golden-haired youth, Jason Lannister, who stood a mere 20 feet away and measured 5 feet 2 inches at the tender age of 13. I command you to knight this lion. Chapter 4. The feast. Sir Arthur Dayne approached Jason amidst the gaze of the assembly. Please kneel, Jason Lannister. Arthur's hands clasped the hilt of his sword, its tip resting upon the ground, presenting it before him. This was an irregular ceremony. He had not earned it through valor nor claimed any honor. Yet it was evident that all present had grown weary of this farce, save for the madman. Why had he suddenly chosen to bestow upon Jason the title of knight? And why was it Sir Arthur, the most esteemed of the Kingsguard, who performed the ceremony? Perhaps he believed Jason to be a person of honor, disinclined to accept such a title. Yet, as fate would have it, Jason found himself in dire need of that very identity. Why refuse? Moreover, should he truly decline? The nobles and knights present, even those who held honor in high regard, would likely resent him for delaying the proceedings and creating a stalemate. Jason knelt on one knee, gazing up at Sir Arthur. The knight's towering form shielded him from the sun, sparing Jason the need to look directly into its blinding rays. In the shadow, Arthur lifted Dawn. The sword's tip rested on Jason's right shoulder. In the name of the warrior, I ask you to be brave. The tip moved to his left shoulder. In the name of the Father, I ask you to be just. Returning to the right shoulder, he continued, in the name of the Mother, I ask you to protect the weak and the innocent. The tip shifted to the left shoulder once more. In the name of the Maiden, I ask you to safeguard all women. Arthur then lowered Dawn before him. Please rise, Sir Jason. Due to the absence of a church setting and the growing impatience of the crowd, Sir Arthur endeavored to keep the ceremony as simple as possible. As Jason rose, a wave of applause erupted around him, with the most fervent cheers coming from the Westermen behind him. Following the knighthood ceremony, that madman opened his foul mouth, expressing a desire for your equestrian skills to be as remarkable as the strength rumored about you, Sir Jason. His intent was clear. He doubted the whispers surrounding me, dismissing them as mere flattery aimed at Duke Tywin. He believed that the once frail Jason Lannister, despite his restored health, possessed little strength. He was convinced that my Lannister pride would compel me to participate in the joust due to his taunting words. He wished to see me humiliated, but I would not grant him that satisfaction. At that moment, commotion arose among the nobles and knights behind the pavilion, and soon a path was cleared. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen approached, mounted on a magnificent white steed. He dismounted to greet the king, then acknowledged the assembled nobles. Everyone held him in high regard and praised him. The focus of the welcoming ceremony had abruptly shifted. Good evening, Sir Jason. You've grown taller, Elia remarked, gazing at the young knight who now towered over her. Feeling her fatigue dissipate in his presence, Jason's mind was filled with the day's events. He promptly set down his goblet. Good evening, Your Highness. Elia corrected him. So, are you truly planning to participate in the jousting tournament? Of course, though the armor is a hassle, and I wasn't prepared, bringing only a breastplate from my time as a squire. However, Jaime mentioned that I could borrow one of his 2 sets if I genuinely intended to compete. It may not fit perfectly, but the difference won't be substantial. I know you are not inquiring about the fit of your armor, she replied. I am aware of your previous frailty. Your father only permitted you to partake in training around the age of 8. While I do not doubt the progress you have made in recent years, you are still only 13. Elia stepped closer to Jason, gently taking his hand as she said, while he may knight you, he cannot compel you to participate in the joust. I understand, but even if he did not demand it, I would still compete. Rest assured, although my training period has been brief, it does not diminish my resolve. I will not allow myself to be unseated at the outset. I shall not provide him the opportunity to mock me. Moreover, I will strive for the championship to prove my worthiness of the title of knight, Jason declared resolutely. I must win the championship. I will not allow Rhaegar the chance to insult you publicly, Jason refrained from uttering aloud. Having missed previous opportunities to compete, how could he easily relinquish this one? Elia, observing the determination in his eyes, realized that persuasion would be futile. He was indeed much like her brother Oberyn, proud and unyielding. At that moment, a singer in the hall tuned his strings, cleared his throat, and began to sing of the blooming flowers of spring. The noble knights set down their goblets and approached the ladies, inviting them to dance within the hall. Elia clasped Jason's arm with one hand while guiding him with the other. Come now, I have brought a Sheila Dane along. She is now my companion. This is the surprise I mentioned earlier. Why do you seem so unfazed? Jason replied honestly, I had actually suspected it all along. It appears you are quite the astute lord, Elia jested. Well then, you must approach her with proper decorum, take her hand, and kiss the back of it. Say something charming. I trust you don't need me to instruct you on that. Then invite her to dance with you. Do you know how to dance? Above all, be careful not to step on her toes. All right, I understand, mother. Jason retorted with a playful eye roll as he made his way toward his betrothed. Elia watched him, amused by his exaggerated gait, and felt an urge to rush forward and thump his head like in their childhood. Yet, she remained rooted in place, quietly observing him. When he turned to smile at her, she deliberately cast him a serious gaze to remind him to walk properly. He resembled my other brother, Oberyn, she mused. Should Jaime truly join the Kingsguard, Jason would become the heir to the guardianship of Casterly Rock in the Westerlands. In time, he would evolve into a noble knight and duke, a capable aide to my future husband. Elia felt genuine joy for him, grateful to the gods for restoring his health, allowing him to avoid the fate she had endured, hoping the deities would eternally safeguard him and protect me, this Lannister brother. Receiving Elia's serious look, Jason smiled and straightened his posture as he approached Sheila. Even amidst the crowd, he spotted her instantly. At 15, she had grown taller than she was 3 years prior, her dark hair framing unforgettable violet eyes and fair skin. On his naming day at the age of 10, Jason had received Tywin's permission to travel to Dorne. Upon arrival, accompanied by Elia and Oberyn, he visited Starfall, the ancestral home of House Dane. There, he met Sheila, and they enjoyed each other's company immensely. Subsequently, the four of them explored other parts of Dorne together. Upon his return to Starfall, she had become his betrothed. As Elia had suggested to Lord Dane that he propose her hand to Jason before their departure, a recommendation that Tywin had graciously accepted. House Dane is one of the oldest families in Westeros, with a lineage purportedly tracing back to the Dawn Age, 10,000 years ago. They are a noble house renowned for their valor in battle, having produced many illustrious knights. This is indeed a union befitting their stations. Not to mention, Sheila and Jason are a match of beauty and grace, their bond deepening throughout their travels. Long time no see, Lady Sheila, Jason said, bowing to kiss the back of her hand. Your beauty is unforgettable. Of course, I would be delighted, Sir Jason, Sheila replied, her thoughts racing to find the right words, ultimately deciding to simply agree. Observing him momentarily frozen in place, she smiled and said, Does Sir Jason not wish to share a dance with me? Jason nearly forgot that this was a Dornish girl, not one to be so quiet. Elia was merely an exception. Of course, I would be delighted. It is my honor. Chapter 5. Dance and song. As the melodies filled the air, Jason endeavored to keep pace with Aerys. The singer had concluded the song of spring's blooming and transitioned to the traditional, albeit coarse, tune of the Bear and the Beautiful Maiden, a melody beloved by both nobility and common folk across the Seven Kingdoms. This bear, this bear, this bear. The singer joyfully launched into the first line, describing the creature in its black-brown, plushy coat. Aerys playfully winked at Jason. He muttered softly, The Lannisters are lions, not bears. Bears, bears. The singer continued. Suddenly, Aerys changed her dance steps, taking the lead. Even a lion is a bear for me tonight. Oh, people are saying, come and behold the beauty. Beauty? He understands. But I am the bear. Relax, Sir Jason. Why focus on your shoes? She urged. Listen, come and see the beauty. She pushed him back a couple of steps and twirled around. All black-brown, covered in fluff. From this end of the road to that. Bears, bears, boys, goats, dancing bears. Jason had no choice but to stride along. His enchanting maiden had suddenly shifted her style, and her bear could hardly keep up, spinning and dancing, gradually approaching the beauty. Oh, she is so sweet, pure and lovely. Aerys graciously slowed her pace, allowing her Lannister to catch up. Thank you, gentle and kind lady, Jason readily praised. Oh, I am but a girl, pure and lovely. Dancing does not involve a shaggy bear. Bears, bears, lift her into the air. At that moment, a chorus of gasps erupted from the hall as several noble knights swept up their partners, twirling them around in laughter. Bears, bears, I call upon the knights. Yet you are the bear. Aerys suddenly wrapped her arms around Jason's neck, their violet and golden green eyes meeting. When shall we wed? While the festivities continued around them, and the hall echoed with song, only this golden-haired pair remained still at the center. Jason felt an overwhelming silence, one so profound he could hear their heartbeats and breaths. Two hearts beating as one. Typically, we must wait until we are of age, which means 3 more years if all goes as planned. Jason, unsure of where to place his hands, kept them close to his side. But by then, I will be 18. You should be holding me, my lion. Jason complied. As tradition dictated, he could marry only at 16. I am willing to wait for you. But you must promise not to consort with those harlots or any other women during these 3 years. Aerys moved even closer. The music seemed to halt. The surrounding dancers paused, curiously observing them, whispers floating through the air. Jason was astonished to find he could not discern the conversations around him, within his world. Only she remained. Together, on the cliffs beneath the sky, bears, the beautiful maiden. The singer concluded the final line. Jason realized that even a Dornish girl could feel shy. Shall we take a stroll? She softly requested, her hearing seemingly restored. As a cacophony of sounds surrounded them, cheers and suggestive whistles. Very well, my lady, he replied, as they slipped away. Outside the tower, the atmosphere was less boisterous compared to the bustling banquet hall. Occasionally, some intoxicated nobles were carried out by their attendants, and a few knights were seen embracing maidens as they departed together. He led her to the kitchen to showcase his battle trophies, and Ishara praised his prowess in slaying bears. Subsequently, they arrived at the Liu's stone courtyard, where Jason introduced her to his peculiar two-handed sword used for practice. This is the first time I've encountered such a sword. It must be quite heavy, she remarked, attempting to lift it. It felt more like a hefty slab of iron. You practice swordsmanship with this? No, I actually use it to assist Sir Adam with his training. I was previously his squire. Jason took the sword back. Just this morning, I was practicing with him when he swung down at me. He abruptly halted. What's wrong? She inquired. There's a fight. Come, let us see. Jason grasped the sword with one hand and pulled Ishara towards the source of the commotion. Outside the courtyard, 3 individuals wielding dull swords were attacking another, who was of diminutive stature, while the 3 were rather tall. His sole trident was snatched away by one of them, yet they continued their assault. The smaller man was thrown to the ground, mocked, shoved, and kicked. Clearly, this was not a fair contest. Jason released Ishara's hand and charged forward with the sword. What are you doing? Stop it at once. He is a man of my father, he shouted. Suddenly, another noblewoman appeared to intervene, brandishing her dull sword and angrily striking at the trio. Though they attempted to retaliate, they were met with the sight of the newly knighted Tywin, wielding an unusual two-handed sword, and they promptly fled. Are you unharmed, Sir Holland? Who were they? The lady inquired. I am well, thank you, Miss Lyanna. They are the retainers of the Hay, Braun, and Fry families. He slowly rose and noticed Jason. I am immensely grateful, Sir Jason. It seems I need no introduction. You should visit the scholar for a brief examination. No need. Please follow me. Thank you for your assistance, Sir Jason. Lyanna glanced at Ishara behind Jason. I shall take it from here. I won't intrude further. With that, she supported Holland and departed. Is that Holland a man of the wetlands? They truly are as diminutive as the rumors suggest, Ishara remarked with curiosity. It seems so. Let us return. Upon re-entering the banquet hall, the festivities continued unabated. Jason bid farewell to Ishara as they returned to their respective seats. No sooner had he sat down than James and Adam began their barrage of inquiries. So soon? Where did you go? Adam offered a goblet of wine. Pray tell, what transpired? Did you merely take a walk? Indeed, what else could we have done? Though she is my fiancée, until we are wed, I have a duty to safeguard her honor. Jason's earnest demeanor rendered James and Adam hesitant to make any further lewd remarks. At this moment, the singer in the hall had been replaced by another, whose appearance bore no resemblance to those from Westeros. Adorned entirely in gray, he likely hailed from the distant eastern continent of Braavos. He tested the strings of his instrument and began to play a melody that Jason found remarkably familiar. This was a song he had heard at every feast in Casterly Rock over the past decade during his name days, the reign of Casterly. This tune had almost become a symbol of House Lannister. To discuss the origin of this song, one must mention Duke Tywin's father, Duke Tytos, who was also Jason's grandfather. He was a gentle and amiable noble, marked by his courteous demeanor, yet simultaneously, he possessed a feeble will and a penchant for indulgence. The lords under his command often mocked and ridiculed him behind his back, and even dared to openly provoke him. Families that borrowed money from the Lannisters seldom repaid their debts. During meetings, they would jestingly refer to him as the Toothless Lion. Lady Elienta Tarbeck audaciously borrowed gold from Tytos to renovate her castle without ever repaying her debt, brazenly expanding her family's territory in the process. The Rains family exhibited similar arrogance. Duke Tytos once dispatched Dennis Mallister to apprehend and bring Earl Tarbeck to trial, but Elienta, along with her brother, the Red Lion Roger Rayne, and Reynard, mounted a rebellion. The Red Lion launched a night raid on Dennis's camp, killing him and many others. In the aftermath, Reynard deceitfully claimed they believed each other to be bandits, thus justifying their violent actions. This absurd excuse, coupled with the fact that Uncle Kevin was serving the Red Lion at the time, led the already furious Duke Tytos to pardon their transgressions. When Tywin returned from the War of the Ninepenny Kings, he, having been tempered by the crucible of war, resolved to bypass his father and restore order to the Westerlands. In 261, he sent ravens to Casterly Rock and Tarbeck Hall, demanding their attendance to confess their wrongdoings. As expected, his summons was met with refusal, leading to the classification of the Rains and Tarbeck families as rebels. Consequently, Tywin gathered his vassals and personally marched against Casterly Rock and Tarbeck Hall. Tywin reasserted the authority of House Lannister, demonstrating the dire consequences of underestimating their power. The two insubordinate families were utterly annihilated. Their strongholds were laid to waste, serving as a stark warning to other houses. The singer later composed a song to commemorate this event, entitled The Reign of Casterly. Subsequently, the Farwyn family of Harrenhal defied Duke Tywin's orders, to which he responded by sending a minstrel to the castle of Earl Farwyn, who performed the Reign of Casterly. From that moment on, the Farwyns dared not question his authority again. However, it was evident that my father's relationship with that madman had become strained, a fact apparent to all. Did this singer not hear any whispers of such discord? Indeed, before he could even begin, the madman stood up, furiously shouting for him to leave, or else he would burn him alive. The singer was swiftly escorted out by the guards of the Earl of Riverlands. At this juncture, Lyanna returned with that Harlan, greeting Jason before returning to her seat. After a short while, she approached again, accompanied by 5 nobles, one of whom was Harlan. The other 4 were unknown to Jason, yet he could infer their identities from the crests displayed on their garments. The individual at the forefront, whose arm is entwined with Lyanna's, is undoubtedly Brandon Stark. The robust man behind him, with a mane of dark hair, is likely Robert Baratheon, who is sharing a hearty laugh with the silent gentleman beside him, who must be Eddard Stark. There is also a youngest among them, adorned with the sigil of the dire wolf upon his chest. Could this be Benjen Stark? Greetings, Sir Jason. I have heard from Lyanna that you assisted in rescuing Ser Hollis. I extend my gratitude. Brandon raised his cup in a toast to Jason. Chapter 6. The opening ceremony. After Jason, Jaime, and Adam exchanged introductions with the Stark brothers and Duke Robert Baratheon, they gathered together to partake in drinks. The other knights from the Westerlands, who had initially shared their table, migrated to different positions, while Lyanna and Ser Hollis Reed sat beside Benjen Stark, discussing strategies to deal with the trio of squires. At that moment, the Mad King rose and departed with his 3 chief advisors, the Master of Coin, Colton Chaster, the Master of Ships, Luce Ryswall, and the Master of Laws, Simon Tanton. The Prime Minister, Earl Owen, and the Captain of the Kingsguard remained in the hall. Is the king convening a small council meeting at such a late hour, without the Prime Minister? Adam could not suppress his sarcasm. Everyone seemed to share this sentiment. It appeared that even the courtiers had split into factions. One faction supported Aerys too, while the other backed Prince Rhaegar. Though merely a rumor, it now seemed to bear truth. This tournament mirrored the court itself, with nobles from all corners of the 7 kingdoms present, who among them supported whom. Regardless, Jason had grown weary of the Targaryen father and son, the mad, foolish king and the hypocritical, shameless prince. As the feast approached its conclusion, nobles and knights began to depart. Yet a keen observer would note that most of those leaving hailed from the Crownlands and the Riverlands. At this juncture, Rhaegar rose from his seat. But rather than exiting the great hall, he moved to the center and took the harp from the servant's hands, sitting in the spot vacated by the dismissed singer from Bravos, and commenced to play and sing. Jason had never heard this song, but he had long been aware of Rhaegar's musical prowess. Perhaps this was an original composition of his. While Jason had never delved into music in either his previous life or this one, he could not deny that, from the audience's perspective, Rhaegar possessed a splendid voice. The remaining nobles in the hall were captivated by his performance of a sorrowful melody. Across the way, however, Benjen suddenly burst into laughter, prompting Jason to realize that Lyanna had been moved to tears by the song, which elicited Benjen's mockery, resulting in Lyanna splashing wine upon his face in retaliation. Rhaegar was tall and striking, with the Targaryen family's dark violet eyes and silver hair. It was rumored that he was exceptionally intelligent, excelling in any endeavor he pursued. Regarded as a gifted musician and formidable knight, Jason conceded that he was indeed an admirable individual, possibly destined to be a good king. Yet, Jason was also acutely aware of Rhaegar's other side. His public affection for another's betrothed was nothing short of an affront to his own wife, especially since Elia was a cherished friend whom Jason held in high regard. So, Jason, have you made your decision? On which day do you intend to make your appearance? James leaned closer and inquired, perhaps we might have a contest after all. Tomorrow, I shall challenge Sir Royston, the eldest son of Count Hien. The following morning, Jason finished his breakfast in the tent and had Adam's servant assist him in donning the armor left by James. Rather than returning to the Tower of the Burning King last night, he had come to the prepared tent by the jousting field, primarily concerned he might oversleep and be late. As he donned the armored bodysuit, fitted the steel shoes, greaves, and leg armor, with the aid of 3 attendants, Jason further adorned himself with a chainmail skirt, backplate, breastplate, shoulder guards, arm guards, underarm plates, wrist guards, elbow guards, and neck guard. Finally, he draped a crimson cloak embroidered with golden lions over his armor, which also featured gilded lion motifs, the eyes crafted from rubies. A full-cover helmet was temporarily held by an attendant. Fortunately, the difference in size between James and Jason was minimal, allowing for slight adjustments by the blacksmith to ensure a proper fit, while the steel shoes were directly purchased from the blacksmith, fitting him well. Clad in this armor, Jason felt as though he had gained several pounds. Thankfully, in his current physique, this weight was not burdensome. Otherwise, moving in armor would have been quite arduous, let alone jousting. Stepping out of the tent, the attendant brought forth his steed, which was not the fine horse that had been attacked by a bear. This horse was a military steed specifically chosen for Jason by Tywin, whom he named Lionheart. He had seldom ridden it. Lionheart boasted noble lineage, was well-trained, towering, and robust. Remarkably handsome, and full of vigor. Mounting the horse and preparing himself, Jason had already instructed his attendant to register him, intending to be one of the first to compete. He wished to showcase the prowess of the Lannisters to those who anticipated his embarrassment. The weather on this day was splendid, with the jousting grounds filled to capacity as people pushed eagerly to secure good vantage points. The nobles settled into their designated seats in the stands. The Lannister tent was positioned to the north of the jousting field, adjacent to the tents of the 4 champions, marked by a massive red shield emblazoned with the golden lion crest. As Jason rode past the deep green tent adorned with the rose emblem towards the stands, he beheld James in gleaming white armor, kneeling before the royal tent in oath. When the captain of the Kingsguard, Sir Gerald Hightower, draped the white cloak over James and helped him rise, the lords and knights of the West erupted in loud cheers for their newly appointed member of the Kingsguard. The Mad King appeared quite pleased, as if the accolades were meant for him. Indeed, I had arrived somewhat late, though fortunately it was nearby. At this moment, the Mad King was in high spirits and paid little heed to my presence. Once the ceremony to appoint James concluded, Lord Walter announced the rules of the joust. His daughter, Cersei Hien, would serve as the Queen of Love and Beauty, while his 4 sons would act as champions to protect the Queen. Each knight competing would duel with either a champion or another knight until no further challengers remained. Thereafter, the 4 champions would compete in one-on-one contests to determine the ultimate victor. The final champion would decide to whom the title of Queen of Love and Beauty would be bestowed. The armor and mounts of the defeated would belong to the victor, and should they wish to reclaim them, a ransom would be required. Certainly, the tournament also featured competitions among 7 factions, including archery, axe throwing, horse racing, and singing contests. The Count briefly outlined the rewards for these events, concluding his remarks. After all, the rules for these customary contests are often fixed, unlike the jousting, which is entirely determined by the organizers and may vary. Furthermore, the Count stated that the tournament would last for 7 days, after which he declared the tournament officially commenced. The steward of Herlenberg then stepped forward to announce the first 4 challengers of the day. The first challenger was Sir Jason from House Lannister. The noble knights of the Westerlands erupted in cheers, while the other nobles politely applauded. Jason had already arrived at the southern end of the jousting field by the time Count Walter was explaining the rules, having dismounted and donned his helmet. The jousting field comprised 4 tracks running north to south, ensuring that the contestants would not face the sun directly. To the east of the field stood a 3-tiered grandstand, with yellow canopies shielding the nobles from sun and rain. Most sat on long benches, but in the center of the stands, Count Walter, his lady wife, Lady Shira, their daughter, Shira, the Mad King, and Prince Rhaegar were provided with 5 high-backed chairs. Upon hearing his name, Jason mounted his horse, Lionheart, and waved to the audience at the entrance of the first track before accepting the jousting lance handed to him by a squire, remaining still in anticipation. This lance featured a blunt tip and a hollow body made of white poplar, extending 12 feet in length, making it prone to breaking. The saddles used in the tournament lacked a cantle, facilitating the knight's fall after being struck. These measures were all designed to enhance safety during the tournament. The steward continued to announce the challengers: Sir Walton from House Fry, Sir Boros from House Braun, Sir Leslin from House Hightower. The nobles applauded in welcome, and the other 3 knights approached the southern end of the jousting field to wave in acknowledgement. As Jason listened to the names of these 3, a sense of familiarity washed over him. Indeed, they were the very knights whose squires had bullied Harlan Reed. But it mattered little. This was not his concern, and the jousting was about to commence. Chapter 7. The Joust. A horn sounded, summoning the challengers to face the 4 champions guarding the fair maiden. The murmurs of the crowd swelled with excitement. Jason and the other 3 knights, lance in hand, galloped slowly to the front of the grandstand, bowing their lances in salute to Count Hightower, Lady Hightower, the maiden, the Mad King, and Prince Rhaegar before turning their horses to select their opponents at the northern end of the jousting field. Jason approached the largest of the 4 champions' tents and rapped his lance against the great shield emblazoned with a yellow bat at the entrance before retreating. He and the other 3 knights returned to the southern end of the jousting field, donning the shields provided by their squires, each emblazoned with a golden lion, awaiting the appearance of their adversaries. Sir Walton was clad in a gray tunic adorned with azure twin towers. Sir Boros wore a glossy green attire, with 2 black hedgehogs embroidered on his garments and shield, separated by a diagonal red stripe running from the upper right to the lower left. Sir Leslin's brown cloak bore golden stripes featuring a black pitchfork. They raised their 12-foot lances skyward as the wind rustled the triangular banners atop them. At the northern end of the arena, attendants led forth the elegantly adorned steeds, allowing the champions to mount. Clad in armor and helmets, wielding lances and shields, they exuded an imposing presence, rivaling their opponents, all 4 adorned in yellow bat insignias. Each champion bore a yellow ribbon, a token from a fair maiden. As the champions took their positions, the grassy field of the tournament fell into an almost reverent silence. Yet, with the blare of a horn, the stillness erupted into a thunderous cheer in less than the span of a heartbeat. Jason spurred his mount, and the air was filled with shouts and screams as 32 iron hooves thundered across the turf. With his lance tucked under his arm, he leveled its tip. In the narrow field of vision, his opponent mirrored his actions, drawing ever closer, their bodies seemingly merging with the warhorses beneath them. Hearts synchronizing with the rhythm of the galloping hooves, crimson capes billowing behind them, champions and challengers swiftly converging in a dazzling spectacle of wood and iron. A mere tremor in the 12-foot lance could cause it to miss its target. As the adversary approached, Jason tightened his grip on the lance, aiming its tip directly at Sir Rostan. Simultaneously, his left hand maneuvered the shield, poised to deflect the opponent's lance. A series of resounding crashes echoed as the tip of Jason's lance collided with the shield, splintering wood and obscuring his vision with debris. A tremendous force surged through him. Yet Jason maintained his composure, deftly handling the broken lance as he raced towards the northern end. The roar of the crowd enveloped him as he turned his horse, only to see his opponent reaching the southern end. Glancing around, he noticed the 3 other knights present, but one was conspicuously absent. An attendant dashed towards the fallen form in the arena, removing the helmet and calling for aid. With little time to spare for others, Jason discarded the broken lance, tightened his grip on the shield, and accepted a new lance from the attendant. He pressed his legs against the horse's belly and charged towards the southern end once more. This time, Jason acclimated to the cacophony of cheers and the thunder of hooves, finding his calm amidst the tremors of the earth. He skillfully aimed his lance to avoid the opponent's shield, shattering against the breastplate instead, while his shield deflected the opponent's lance, the tip grazing his shoulder armor. Sir Rostan fell from his mount, and Jason returned to the southern end. He discarded the lance, received another, and, amidst the cheers, paraded with his lance to the northern end before retreating to his tent for respite. Removing his helmet, he discovered that Sir Walton was the other victor. Also returning to his tent, the remaining 2 knights cast aside their broken lances and seized new ones, charging once more at their opponents. 3 lances shattered simultaneously, and yet another bad insignia fell from the saddle. Boros paraded around before returning to his tent, while Leslin engaged once again with another knight from Riverrun. Jason took a cup of wine and sipped twice. He mused that this jousting was not overly challenging. Though he had yet to face the likes of the Kingsguard or Rhaegar, he would see when the time came. If he emerged victorious, he could avoid the humiliation in front of Elia, yet he feared he could not avert the impending war. Should Rhaegar and Lyanna truly love each other as depicted in the tales, it was unlikely they would forsake their bond for a queen devoid of love and beauty. Should war erupt, my father Tywin would remain a passive observer. However, should Rhaegar fall in battle, he would, in a bid to demonstrate loyalty to Robert and to elevate Cersei to the throne, be compelled to undertake the grim task of annihilating the Targaryen lineage. In such a scenario, what position would I find myself in? I cannot idly stand by and witness the tragedy befalling Elia. In my previous life, she was but a mere background character in a television drama, devoid of dialogue or a moment in the limelight. In this life, when I believed I would once again endure a lifetime of suffering, She treated me with kindness, as if I were family. Yet, if I were truly to save her and her children, what ramifications would that have for my true family, the Lannisters? I fear Robert would march his forces upon us. Perhaps he would not, but who can guarantee that? Moreover, even if I were to devise a solution for Elia's plight, the marriage of Cersei to Robert poses another dilemma regarding Jaime. Contemplating these matters, Sir Jason felt overwhelmed. Sir Jason, greetings. I am Ser Roston's squire, Doug, he announced. Doug entered the tent, taken aback by Jason's youthful appearance. Ser Roston wishes to redeem his armor and steed, and he has tasked me with inquiring about the ransom. Not a problem, Flemon. After today's tournament concludes, you may confer with Doug to assess the value of Ser Roston's armor and mount, Jason replied. Flemon Blacks, originally the squire of Sir Adam Marbrand, had now found himself temporarily serving Jason, as they were only 2 years apart in age. By the way, how is Ser Roston? Is he injured? Jason inquired. Ser Roston sustained no serious injuries. Thank you for your concern, Doug responded before taking his leave, promising to return later. In the meantime, Leston finally unseated the last of the Riverlands challengers. A trumpet sounded, heralding the entrance of 3 new contenders. Jason noted a change in the voice announcing the names. It seemed the steward of Harrenhal was responsible solely for the initial introduction of the challengers, with his subordinates taking over thereafter. The herald called out the first name, Sir Montford, hailing from House Velaryon, a noble of the Crownlands and son of the Master of Ships, Lord Corlys Velaryon. The second challenger was Sir Mace, from House Tyrell, the son of the Warden of the South, Duke Mace Tyrell. Although House Tyrell boasts a rich history, they were not the original rulers of the Reach. Over 2 centuries prior, during the conquest, the last king of the Reach, Mern Gardner IX, allied with King Call to declare war on Aegon the Conqueror. In the conflagration known as the Field of Fire, King Mern and all his sons were incinerated by dragonfire, leading to the extinction of House Gardner. The steward of the Reach, Harlan Tyrell, surrendered the castle to the Conqueror, for which Aegon Targaryen granted Highgarden and the Reach to House Tyrell. Consequently, the Tyrell's dominion over Highgarden has been persistently challenged by other nobles of the Reach. The noble lineages of Oakhart, Florent, Roant, Peake, and Redwine are ancient and distinguished, claiming a closer kinship to the Gardner family and asserting that the Highgarden rightfully belongs to them. However, the Conqueror Aegon remains indifferent to their claims. After the conclusion of the First Dornish War, Duke Tyrell summoned a multitude of scholars and clerics to deliberate on the rights of succession to Highgarden, thereby fortifying the Tyrell family's position. Nevertheless, many continued to secretly deride the Tyrells, mocking them as nouveau riche. The third contender is Ser Lannister of House Tarly, another noble from the Reach. Jason knows little about him, save for the fact that he is a formidable warrior, as mentioned in the previous season series, where he triumphed over Robert in the yet-to-occur War of Usurpers. Furthermore, his son, Samwell Tarly, plays a significant role in the tale of Westeros. These 3 are poised to challenge me, along with Ser Wotton and Ser Boros, while Ser Leston has just completed a match and requires respite. Who would dare select me? Before long, Jason discerned a knight adorned with the emblem of a swift hunter on a green field in red garments, rapping upon his shield, donning his helmet. He mounted a spare warhorse that had yet to enter the fray, and amidst the cheers, he approached the northern end of the tournament grounds to face Count Lannister. Chapter 8. The Knight of the Smiling Tree. Ser Lannister is a formidable adversary. Typically, a contender of such caliber would emerge on the 2nd or 3rd day. If a powerful knight appears on the 1st day, 2 scenarios may arise. Either no one is willing to challenge him, or he will be persistently confronted, as there will always be those eager to attempt to vanquish a legendary knight and earn their glory, even should he withstand the initial onslaught. He is bound to be weary by the time of the final showdown, diminishing his chances of claiming victory, as both knights shattered their 3rd lance simultaneously. The nearby course witnessed the Golden Rose unseated by the Black Porcupine. When Jason charged northward once more, Ser Boros was seen slowly returning to the northern end, lance raised. Another resounding clash echoed as the 4th lance splintered. Ser Lannister swayed dangerously in his saddle, nearly unseating himself. Cheers erupted around, and Jason turned to see that Ser Wotton had also unhorsed Ser Montford of House Velaryon. Only the Golden Lion and the Swift Hunter remained in the arena. Given the previous charge, most spectators were convinced that Lannister would emerge victorious. Considering Jason's youth, this was indeed a remarkable spectacle. The cheers from the common folk surrounding the stands were particularly fervent, their bets placed on Jason, rallying him with loud encouragement. Conversely, those who had wagered on Count Lannister were visibly frustrated, wishing to curse yet hesitating, resorting instead to fervent prayers for the hunter to best the young lion. Disregarding the surrounding commotion, Jason seized a new lance, squeezing his mount's flanks as he charged once more toward the southern end. Neither knight unseated. Again, neither achieved victory. Just as Ser Wotton intended to halt the contest to allow the scorekeepers to tally points based on the location struck, the crowd erupted in fervent cheers and curses. At last, Count Lannister's lance was met with opportunity, as Jason deflected it with his shield, while his own lance exploded against the face of the hunter depicted upon it. The black steed clad in green armor, ridden by Sir Lando, was jolted by the blow, causing him to tumble from the saddle. Jason raised his new lance, intending to pass by the stands from the southern end of the tournament grounds and return to the north. He noticed the madman observing him as he brandished his lance. His grip firm and his expression dark. Jason deliberately swayed the triangular pennant on his lance a few extra times before departing. Just as he dismounted, the sound of a trumpet echoed behind him, signaling a challenge to Leslin. The herald called out the name of the mercenary knight, Sir Grinning Tree, and a murmur spread through the crowd. Although any knight could participate in this contest, the appearance of a mercenary knight was indeed a rarity. The reason was simple. They often lacked substantial funds or spare armor, relying solely on their equipment for their livelihood. Losing a match could render their armor and mounts irretrievable. Perhaps he sought to catch the eye of a lord with his impressive performance, or perhaps he dreamt of becoming a champion. The former seemed more plausible. Jason chose not to enter the tent but stood at the entrance, curiously observing the enigmatic mercenary knight. He was clad in mismatched armor that appeared ill-fitting. A white fish beam adorned his shield, accompanied by a red smiling face, likely the origin of his name. Could this grinning tree be from the north? He resolved to inquire with Brandon later that evening. The knight saluted the stands with his lance before advancing and striking a black hayfork adorned with golden stripes. Instead of returning, he continued forward, striking the black hedgehog and the azure twin towers in succession, finally halting before Jason. It was then that Jason realized the knight was rather diminutive, his determined green eyes visible only through the crevices of his helmet. Who could this be? Was he perhaps a character from a past drama, or had he simply forgotten? Did such a figure aspire to challenge all the champions at once? While some could manage such a feat, it was generally deemed presumptuous, akin to forcing oneself into a gauntlet, and it displayed a lack of respect. Jason shifted aside, making room for his shield. However, the grinning tree knight did not strike the fourth shield. Instead, he reined in and returned to the southern end of the tournament grounds. Amidst gasps, discussions, and silence, this mysterious knight stood ready with his shield, awaiting his first opponent. Sir Leslin mounted a gray stallion brought forth by his squire, accepting his lance and shield at the northern end of the course. A horn sounded, and the two knights surged forth almost simultaneously. Within just 2 charges, Sir Leslin was unseated. Next came the furious Sir Boros, intent on avenging his fallen comrade, but after 7 rounds, he too fell. Sir Walton managed to endure only 4 rounds. Cheers rose in crescendo, drowning out the initial skepticism and mockery. Of the 4 champions, only 2 remained, compelling the herald to designate the next 2 knights set to compete as champions: Brandon Stark, son of the North, and Alkin Florin, son of the Earl of Brightwater Keep. At last, today the final 4 champions adorned their arms with yellow ribbons, parading before the stands to announce the conclusion of today's tournament. Upon returning to the tent and shedding his armor, Jason rode back to Harrenburg atop Lionheart, encountering numerous noble ladies along the way, most of whom were engaged in discussions about the enigmatic knight of the smiling tree. After handing Lionheart over to the stable boy, Jason made his way to the great hall. The hall was already prepared with a feast, and as Jason savored the bear's paw reserved for him, Jaime approached. "Hey, brother. I feel like you should be cautious when facing me," Jaime jested. "Are you serious? Are you challenging me right from the start? Aren't we still brothers?" Jason replied, momentarily at a loss for words. "I'm doing this for your own good. You've been through so much, facing countless opponents. I will compete tomorrow, aiming to allow you some much-needed rest," Jaime laughed. Jason took a sip of wine and shifted the conversation to other matters. "Are you truly planning to serve that king? He appointed you as a Kingsguard merely to embarrass our father." Jaime's smile faded. "I did not choose to become a Kingsguard for him. It is for Cersei, isn't it?" "This is not a subject for discussion here," Jason replied, aware that although the Knights of the Westerlands might not betray Jaime's musings about the king, the matter of Jaime and Cersei was altogether different. Incest was a taboo throughout Westeros. While the Targaryens were known for marrying siblings to preserve their bloodline, it was said that such practices were to ensure purity. The Seven Kingdoms had never openly debated this. Yet, this was the Targaryens, a lineage from the Valyrian region of Essos, with their own customs and a unique bloodline, capable of commanding dragons. even though the dragons had currently vanished from existence. If that is the case, why submit to the ceremony? You could refuse. Given the current situation, he would not dare act against the Lannisters. Duke Tywin was evidently supporting Rhaegar, and more nobles were rallying behind the notion of replacing Aerys II Targaryen with Prince Rhaegar. Following the tournament, after witnessing the king's madness, many would likely lean towards Rhaegar. But I swore an oath a month ago, Jason. Do you want me to become an oath breaker? Jaime stated solemnly. Chapter 9. The Isle of Faces. Jason found himself at a loss for words. In his eyes, whether it was the regicide Jaime from the television series of his past life, or the Jaime who had been his brother and lived with him for over a decade, he understood that Jaime was a man who valued his vows. He held oaths in high regard, while also possessing a clear perspective on reality. His one flaw, and arguably his greatest, was his love for Cersei. Their father, Duke Tywin, had always desired to wed Cersei to Rhaegar during his tenure as Hand of the King. But this ambition had been thwarted when Rhaegar married Princess Elia of Dorne. Yet, Tywin had consistently kept Cersei close in King's Landing, perhaps having sensed something amiss. Recently, Jaime had finally become the squire to Ser Arthur, gaining the opportunity to travel to King's Landing. Before his departure, he came to bid farewell to Jason, and it was evident that he was immensely pleased. One cannot help but wonder if his becoming a Kingsguard is somehow related to Cersei. If that were indeed the case, it would be a cruel twist of fate. A month prior, the Mad King had appointed Jaime as a Kingsguard without the consent of Lord Tywin, which led to Tywin severing all ties with the Mad King. He resigned from his position as Hand of the King and returned to the Westerlands with Cersei. Jaime, on the other hand, vowed to remain in King's Landing to guard the Mad King. I do not mean that. Alas, it is too late to discuss it now. I respect your choice, Jaime, Jason could only say. The two fell into silence until Sir Gerald Hightower, the captain of the Kingsguard clad in white armor, approached, followed by his fellow white-clad brothers. He informed Jaime that the king summoned all Kingsguard to deliberate on important matters. Jaime rose and followed them out of the great hall. After finishing his meal, Jason also exited, mounted his horse, and rode out of the gate, where he encountered Brandon and the others, reining in to catch up. He inquired of Ser Brandon, "Is that grinning knight from the north?" "I am uncertain. He bears the sigil of the old gods. So it is indeed plausible he hails from the north. However, I have not heard of such a mercenary knight before." Brandon's response took Jason by surprise. Perhaps this was his first appearance. His name had not been known until now, Jason surmised. Robert Baratheon leaned closer, in my opinion. We should seek out the steward of Harrenhal and inquire if the grinning knight left any specific information. If not, we can confront the knight directly and lift his helm to see for ourselves. Eddard Stark, however, disagreed with this approach. Benjen added, Lyanna has already visited the steward and found no clues. Perhaps he is an envoy sent by the old gods. The three champions he challenged were coincidentally the masters of the three squires who bullied Holland last night. He leaned in slightly, speaking mysteriously. Indeed, I heard Holland praying to the old gods last night. Lyanna and I intended for him to confront those knights personally to avenge himself. But he feared that should he lose, it would tarnish his family's honor. Perhaps the old gods heard his prayers. Robert burst into laughter. You might as well say he is a child of the forest. I see him as rather diminutive. He could very well be from the Isle of Many Faces in the Lake of the God's Eye. Even so, why would the children of the forest aid Holland read? Benjen pondered. Seven hells. Ned, how is it that your brother is just as straightforward as you? Can't you tell I was being sarcastic? Eddard merely smiled and remained silent. Benjen's face turned crimson. Perhaps he is indeed a child of the forest. They are the messengers of the old gods. They have long since vanished for 1,000 years. And perhaps those tales are merely the idle legends of old, he continued. Moreover, the challenge to those three champions might be mere coincidence, not intended for that marshland man. Robert disagreed, riding up beside Jason. You tell me, I noticed him banging his shield. Did he not stop next to you at one point? Have you spoken to him? Why did he strike only the first three and not you? To be candid, observing his confident demeanor, I initially presumed he would triumph over the four champions. However, I cannot assert this with certainty, as we did not engage in conversation at that moment. Nonetheless, I noted his striking green eyes, even more pronounced than those of our Lannister lineage. Jason chuckled, suggesting he might indeed be a child of the forest from the Isle of Faces. This sacred isle, nestled at the heart of the God's Eye, is one of the few remaining places in the southern regions of Westeros where the rare weirwood trees still flourish, as most have been felled and burned, with only a couple remaining in the castles of the nobility. Legend has it that towards the end of the Dawn Age, the first men waged a relentless war against the children of the forest for centuries, until wise representatives from both sides convened on the Isle of Faces to forge a solemn oath. thereby concluding the conflict. To commemorate this hard-won peace, the thousands of weirwoods on the island were each carved with a face by the children, so the old gods might witness the signing of the pact, thus giving the island its name. Following the treaty, the sacred order known as the Green Men was established to guard this southern isle of weirwoods. There are even whispers that during the time of the Dance of Dragons, Adam Valerion, the bastard dragon knight of House Blackwood, sought the counsel of the Green Men after fleeing King's Landing. We could procure a few boats from Count Walter to venture to the island. Just then, Lyanna rode up, having just gathered news. It appears that Ser Walton, Ser Boros, and Ser Leslin wished to redeem their armor and steeds from the Smiling Knight, who responded that he required no ransom, but insisted the three knights must properly discipline their squires upon their return to reclaim their gear. This revelation astonished the crowd. Could it be that Harlan Reed had indeed failed to face him? Robert could hardly believe it. Eddard, too, was intrigued. What tidings did Harlan carry? I inquired about the mysterious knight's arrival, but he was equally uninformed. Lyanna promptly suggested, "What do you say? Shall we embark on an adventure to the Isle of Faces? Will you join us? I am to partake in a melee this afternoon. Perhaps we could venture there tonight." Robert proposed. Banyan concurred, intending to compete in the horse races. Might it not be perilous at night? It is said that the waters of the gods can rise unexpectedly, and countless curious nobles from the Riverlands have met their demise in capsized boats. At least during the day, we can see the surface, Eddard remarked, ever the voice of prudence. Then let us go this afternoon. Robert and Banyan may proceed to their contests. We can scout the island first, and once the melee concludes, we can return for you, Jason suggested, turning to the newcomer in their circle. Of course, how could such an exhilarating adventure exclude me? Jason readily agreed. Can you all swim? Do not don your armor. Just in case, Lyanna inquired. I have spent considerable time in Lannisport, so I shall manage just fine, Jason assured them first. Next came Brandon, who jested that he had no issue with it, despite having only recently learned, especially since he intended to marry the daughter of the Duke of Tully from Riverrun, whose family crest featured a trout. Thus, he had taken it upon himself to learn swimming. Well, I've only soaked in the hot springs of Winterfell, Ed said, scratching his head in embarrassment. I think I'll go watch the tournament instead and not join you. Then it's settled. You all go find Lord Walter, and I shall inquire if Holland is coming. We shall meet by the shore, Lyanna declared before departing. Jason and Brandon then returned to Harrenhal, leaving Robb, Banyan, and Ed behind. Chapter 10. Outsiders. The Lake of the Gods is a vast expanse of water located at the southern boundary of the Riverlands. Harrenhal and its subordinate town of Harrentown are situated on the northern shore of this lake. Jason and Brandon embarked on a small boat from the shore, while Lyanna and Holland remained aboard to admire the scenery. The waters of the Lake of the Gods shimmered in emerald hues, warm and inviting. Jason had never encountered such a grand lake, its edges fading into oblivion, with black swans gliding gracefully across its surface. The crystal stream fed into the lake, while an unnamed tributary flowed out, eventually merging with the Blackwater River. The lake appeared as a brilliant blue, as if carved by the sun, occupying half the world. Setting off in the afternoon and nearing dusk, Jason's party finally reached the Isle of Many Faces. Throughout the journey, Brandon and Holland took turns rowing, while Jason showcased his remarkable endurance. Fortunately, the waters remained calm, devoid of the legendary storms. Under the glow of the setting sun, the tranquil surface of the lake sparkled like a sheet of copper. Together, they pushed the wooden boat onto the shallows and ventured into the depths of the Isle of Many Faces, known for its abundant fishwood. The richness of the trees was unlike anything Jason had ever seen, yet each tree bore a crimson smile upon its bark, instilling an unsettling feeling of being watched. Is that the Green Prophet from the show observing us? Would he uncover my secret? Jason slowly drew his sword, parting the underbrush as he advanced, keenly observing his surroundings. Meanwhile, Lyanna strode past him with determination. Upon turning, Jason noticed that he was the only one among the four who had drawn a weapon. Holland stood before the first fishwood tree, seemingly praying, while Brandon moved confidently to the right, and Lyanna continued forward. What is happening? Are you all planning to split up? What if something goes wrong? Lyanna appeared puzzled. This is the land of the old gods. What reason do our ancestors have to fear here? What of the children of the forest? Though your ancestors may have signed a non-aggression pact here, it was not your hand that pinned it, and time has passed. Can you truly guarantee their goodwill towards you? Choosing not to explain further to Lyanna, Jason turned to advise Brandon to exercise caution. Yet, Brandon disregarded him completely and strode away. Witnessing this, a chill ran down Jason's spine. This is bad. They must be under some form of control. This is a classic horror movie trope. Without hesitation, Jason rushed to catch up, intending to lead them back to the boat and bind them with rope. Upon seeing his movement, Brandon and Lyanna began to run, while Holland remained frozen in place. What in the world is happening? Jason observed that he was still normal, instructing him to wait by the ship's edge before turning to pursue Brandon. The forest was almost devoid of pathways, yet Brandon, undeterred by obstacles, ran swiftly, clearly well acquainted with the terrain. Jason also dashed through the jungle, rapidly closing the distance between them. Just as he reached out to grasp Brandon, the scenery before him abruptly shifted, although still within the woods. The trees appeared different and more sparse, the ground strewn with dry grass. Strange sounds echoed in his ears. Gunfire. What was happening? Was I also under control? Why were there gunshots? With no time for contemplation, a figure clad in what resembled special forces attire suddenly emerged before him, raising a weapon and firing upon his approach. Instinctively, Jason attempted to evade, but his body felt unresponsive. The bullet struck him, a searing pain coursing through him, nearly causing him to black out. Yet his vision rapidly zoomed in, and he felt himself leap forward, arms tearing through the air, ultimately crashing into the assailant, whose expression morphed into one of terror. There was no time to assess the outcome. Another fully armed individual appeared beside him. Jason swung a fist, feeling resistance, yet visually. He perceived his punch as having missed entirely, yet the assailant's head exploded violently. Had I suddenly acquired some form of magic? What was the nature of these gunmen? As soon as one fell, two more appeared ahead, and Jason charged forward, delivering savage strikes that left grotesque wounds on his adversaries. After dispatching them, an overwhelming sense of fatigue enveloped him, the pain from his wounds intensifying. Jason heard a primal roar escape his lips, a furious cry that ignited the very essence of his being. Abruptly awakening, Jason found himself lying on the grass, drenched in sweat. He reached for his body. His clothes were intact, free of bullet wounds or blood, though his arm ached, and his palms were stained crimson. Who are you? Are you James? A voice echoed in his ear. Where do you come from? What were those weapons? What was happening? It appeared that everything he had just witnessed was orchestrated by the owner of that voice. My name is Jason Lannister. And you? Are you a green seer? No. It's not like that. I understand now. Your body does not belong here. It originates from another realm. Who brought you here? His final question seemed almost rhetorical, as if he were pondering his own existence. However, Jason found himself bewildered by his words. Judging by his reaction, he must know that I have traversed realms. But what was this James? And why did he claim my body hailed from elsewhere? Am I not merely a soul displaced? My body was bestowed by my parents of this life. Blonde-haired, blue-eyed, tall, a perfect embodiment of Lannister heritage. Yet, the sudden transformation from weakness to strength was undeniable. Hey, where are you? Why have you ceased speaking? Jason shouted, but silence prevailed. What a riddle maker. These supernatural beings delight in such antics. A rustle caught his attention, and as he turned, an arrow hurtled toward him, piercing his left arm. Jason collapsed, disregarding the pain, scrambling to take cover behind a nearby tree. Peering cautiously, he found no sign of enemies. A sharp, burning itch emanated from the wound on his left arm. Could it be that the arrow was poisoned? This was an unprecedented situation for Jason, and panic surged through him. Without a moment's hesitation, he forcefully yanked the arrow from his flesh, only to discover that its tip was fashioned from stone. Turning to inspect the wound, he noticed that aside from a tear in his clothing and some bloodstains, the injury had mysteriously vanished. Where do you hail from? What are those weapons? The voice resumed. Jason gripped the arrow tightly, surveying his surroundings. He had been encircled. Among the trees, figures emerged, their diminutive forms adorned with deep chestnut skin and large ears. Most possessed golden eyes, but the leader's gaze was a striking green. With only 3 fingers, his thumb tipped with a sharp claw rather than a nail. Who are the children of the forest, and what is your intent? Jason, unable to locate his sword, resorted to wielding the stone arrow as a weapon. Answer me, the voice commanded. To be frank, I do not understand your meaning. I am Jason Lannister, son of Lord Tywin of Casterly Rock and Lady Joanna Lannister. If you possess the knowledge of the past, as the rumors suggest, then my words must hold truth. I hope my remarkable healing ability remains intact to aid me in escaping this predicament. How had he never recognized this self-healing capacity before? Of course, prior to the age of 7, he had been frail, shielded by his parents. Following that, he had regained his strength, and due to his robust constitution, he had seldom suffered injuries in his martial training. This was indeed his first experience of injury, albeit brief. The voice fell silent, and Jason assumed this was a prelude to an attack. He prepared to charge at the green-eyed diminutive leader when the figure unexpectedly retrieved a sword from behind. a sword that belonged to Jason. Stepping forward, the figure raised the blade with both hands. Jason discarded the stone arrow and accepted his sword. Was reconciliation at hand? Yet the voice ceased to speak, and the small leader addressed him directly. Depart, outsider. Brandon, where's Lyanna? The tall man and the other woman who accompanied me to the island, Jason inquired. The Starks are searching for you. Upon your arrival at the Isle of Many Faces, you fled from them. They wished to pursue you, but alas, they could not. Chapter 11. The Heart of the Lion. The body of the wolf as they withdrew like a receding tide, Jason sheathed his sword. He then approached a nearby stream. Producing a handkerchief to cleanse his shoulder and the crevices of his fingers, he needed to concoct an excuse. He would attribute the tear in his clothing to a branch. After washing away the blood from his hand, he found no lingering wounds. Wait a moment. The pain in his arm from the dream and the vision. The extraordinary healing ability, the blood on his fingers. Why did this all seem so familiar? In the chaos of being struck and surrounded, he had not taken the time to ponder. Now, reflecting upon it, fragments of the earlier vision began to surface in his memory. Setting down the handkerchief, Jason scrutinized his arm, pressing his fingers along his forearm, but felt nothing out of the ordinary. He clenched his fist tightly, straining with all his might. Yet there was no response. Could it be that he had misjudged? Did his healing abilities still exist? Jason drew his long sword once more, lightly grazing the blade against his palm. A faint sting followed, soon accompanied by a sensation of warmth and itch, as the wound visibly began to mend. Suddenly, a bold idea struck him. Why not directly cut open to investigate? Yet, he decided to try again, reasoning that if it proved ineffective, he could always resort to a deeper incision, albeit with a modicum of pain. Jason sheathed his sword, inhaled deeply, clenched his fists, and meticulously recalled the sensations from his first leap in the illusion. With renewed vigor, he exerted pressure on his arm, and the familiar, tearing sting surged through him. Gritting his teeth, he observed 3 raised lines on his forearm, as if something beneath the surface was pushing outward, until the skin between his fingers split apart and 3 bony claws emerged. So, this is the meaning behind it. The voice had proclaimed that his body did not belong here, that it hailed from another realm. How utterly peculiar. He realized he was akin to Wolverine, albeit without the resemblance. While Logan had dark hair, he possessed the golden locks of a Lannister. Everything suddenly made sense. In films, Wolverine's frail childhood culminated in a powerful transformation. Although he had not experienced such a moment of eruption, his health had gradually restored itself after the age of 7, achieving full vitality by 8, ultimately revealing his extraordinary abilities. This was neither the blessing of the 7 gods nor a gift from the Lord of Light. It suggested that after his demise in a previous life, he had been reborn into a body from another world, the body of Wolverine. Could it be any more absurd? Those illusions must be memories belonging to this body. It seemed the Green Prophet had yet to discern his predicament, only recognizing the issues pertaining to this corporeal form. Yet, this body was now his. Thus it constituted his concern as well. He dismissed the convoluted thoughts clouding his mind. Jason washed his right hand anew, took up his longsword, and set off in search of Brandon and the others. Damn that Green Prophet for not providing clearer directions. Where on earth am I? Before long, dusk began to descend. The scent of his companions wafted through the air, and fortuitously, he found himself heading in the right direction. Where have you been? Lyanna reproached him as he arrived. Didn't we agree to stick together? Could he admit he was ensnared by the old gods and subsequently surrounded by the children of the forest? Their deities were certainly unfriendly. Jason spoke candidly. Really? After we lost track of you, we searched everywhere and saw not a trace of the children of the forest. Why would they prefer to encounter a Lannister who worshipped the 7 rather than a Stark of their own faith? How should I know? Perhaps I am favored by more than just the 7. Jason could only respond in such a manner, unable to mention his identity as Wolverine for fear that Lyanna would retort with something like, why not claim to be a direwolf instead? Enough. We can discuss this later. Both Jason and I have a tournament to attend tomorrow afternoon. The sun is nearly set. We should rest here for the night and return to Harrenhal at dawn. Seeing that Jason was unharmed, Brandon led the way back to their camp. The camp, as it were, consisted merely of a cluster of campfires and a few blankets. After a simple dinner and an assignment of watch duties, Jason collapsed into sleep, overwhelmed by the day's myriad events. In the night, I dreamt once more of the phantasmagoria of daylight. However, this time, I wielded control over my own body, hunting down those armed men in the woods. Awakened by Holland, Jason commenced his vigil over the encampment. While others slumbered, he quietly practiced extending his bone claws. Jason noted that the sensation of tearing in his arms had dissipated. It was merely uncomfortable as the claws emerged through his palms and fingers, and the bloodshed had significantly diminished. Moreover, his vision felt altered. As the last sentinel of the night, the darkness before dawn could not obscure his sight. This endeavor bore considerable fruit. Now, I possessed the ability to see in the dark, a skill I lacked before. The bone claws proved to be an unexpectedly effective method of assault in combat. Not to mention my regenerative ability, I could practically dominate the battlefield. As Jason mused, time slipped away gradually. At the break of dawn, he roused his companions, partook in breakfast, packed their belongings, launched their small vessel into the water, and then paddled back. Their return was swifter than their arrival, as if the currents conspired to assist them. Did the Green Prophet possess such power? Or was it the magic of the children of the forest aiding them? Upon reaching the shore, they returned the boat. A group of them rowed from Harrenhal back to the grassy field of the tournament at Harrenhal. The town was nearly deserted, as most had gone to witness the second group competition held that morning, featuring archery contests, axe-throwing competitions, horse racing, and singing contests. Upon arriving at the grassy field, they found the horse races underway. Ban Yang was amongst the competitors, indicating he had not been eliminated from the first round yesterday afternoon. Lyanna and Holland cheered for Ban Yang, while Brandon intended to retreat for some rest. Jason chose to return to his tent alone. Upon seeing him, Fleming Black asked, "My lord, where were you yesterday afternoon? Sir James sought you out. I merely took a stroll on Face Island. What business does my elder brother have with me?" Jason casually replied, pouring himself a glass of red wine and savoring it slowly. Sir James remarked that the king had commanded him to return to King's Landing to protect Queen Layla. He had wished to bid farewell to Jason, but left a message upon finding him absent. "I see. Understood. What of Sir Royston's armor and steed? Have you deliberated on that? And what of Lord Blando? Does he require the redemption of his equipment?" Jason suddenly recalled the squire named Doug from the previous day. Fleming promptly produced a sheet of paper, stating, "We meticulously calculated Sir Royston's equipment yesterday afternoon. The final ransom price has been set at 17 golden dragons. Once you consent, we can commence the transaction." As Fleming spoke, he flipped through the pages in his hand. "Lord Blando himself visited yesterday, expressing a desire to formally meet you. He is willing to pay 13 golden dragons and 200 silver stags for his gear, roughly equating to 14 golden dragons." "Very well, the price seems reasonable. Let us proceed accordingly. After the tournament concludes this afternoon, allow them to engage in the trade." "Thank you for your efforts, Fleming." Jason stretched languidly, declaring, "I intend to rest a while longer. Have the servant bring lunch later. You need not remain by my side constantly. Feel free to observe the tournament and take a respite." "Thank you, my lord, but I am not fatigued." After saying this, Fleming ceased to disturb Jason, exiting the tent to instruct a servant to inform the kitchen at Harrenhal to prepare a meal for Sir Jason to be delivered to the field after the morning's tournament concluded. Although Jason claimed he was resting, he merely lay in bed, lost in thought. Jaime had suddenly been dispatched to King's Landing by the Mad King. What could this mean? A threat? It seemed unnecessary, for when he returned to King's Landing, Jaime would naturally accompany him. Had the war been hastened? Yet, Rhaegar and Lyanna had not encountered any troubles. Where would this war arise from? Or was it simply that he did not wish Jaime to partake in the tournament? If it were the former, the only war Jason could conceive of at this moment was the impending clash between Rhaegar and the Mad King, with the latter detaining Jaime to prevent his father, Lord Tywin, from aiding Rhaegar. Nevertheless, he perceived no signs of such an escalation. Merely moments ago, he had observed Rhaegar and the Mad King seated together in the stands, watching the horse race. If it were the latter, the Mad King was quite the bore. What significance was there in barring Jaime from competing? This maneuver, aside from inciting the ire of his older brother, held no strategic merit in Jason's eyes. Never mind. He would rest for now. When the time came, he would confront whatever challenges arose, ready to face them head-on. Chapter 12. The tournament of Baelish. The subsequent 4 days were marked by a notable lack of excitement. Aside from the sudden disappearance of the grinning knight, who had bested 3 lords and demanded that they punish their squires in exchange for armor and steeds, leaving the challengers and helmet lifters in vain. The Mad King even dispatched men to seek him, ultimately discovering only the shield emblazoned with his smiling fish sigil. Meanwhile, Jason continued to engage in the tournament, resting and spectating. The horse races, axe throwing, archery, team tournaments, and musical competitions unfolded in succession. 2 days prior, the champion of the horse race was Benjen Stark, leading to a series of gatherings over the next 2 days where everyone had to endure his boasts about how he had triumphed over Janewood Hunter at the last moment. The gatherings mainly consisted of the 4 Stark siblings along with Robert and Jason. Lisa had gradually participated less, perhaps weary of the knights' incessant bragging about whom they had defeated in various tournaments. or how fiercely they had fought despite their losses. Jason felt she was likely disinterested because she could no longer extract amusing tidbits from him. She had spent the previous days inquiring about Jason's experiences on the Isle of Faces, yet regrettably, Jason's truth was met with skepticism. Asha Greyjoy, once an outsider to their circle, had now joined in, even attempting to invite Elia, who politely declined. Aside from the horse race, the champion of the axe throwing was Sir Roger from House Arryn, the archery champion was Brynden from House Tully, and just a day prior, the team tournament champion was Duke Robert from House Baratheon. Thus, today's gathering saw him as the center of attention for boasting. Regarding the competition of singers, Jason had not paid much attention, only hearing from Ashera that one was named Hamish, known as the minstrel Hamish. Lyanna believed that if Prince Rhaegar were to compete, he would undoubtedly emerge as the champion. Today marked the 6th day of the tournament, with the melee yet to conclude. The 4 champions thus far were Jason Lannister, Brandon Stark, Euron Royce, and Oswell went. Sir Oswell was the first of the Kingsguard to take to the field, and the match left a profound impression on Jason. In merely 4 charges, he had felled Eddard Stark, earning the adulation of the entire audience. In recent days, Jason's opponents had predominantly been nobles from the Crownlands and the Riverlands. It seemed the Mad King could no longer tolerate the sight of the golden-haired, blue-eyed young lion parading with his lance before the stands. Hence, today's adversary was Ser Bollistan Selmy of the Kingsguard, known as the Fearless Bollistan. He was 44 years old, yet still appeared robust and graceful, towering in stature, with blue eyes that many perceived as emanating a melancholic aura. Like other members of the Kingsguard, his armor, cloak, and shield were white, adorned with silver threads and hooks upon the scale armor. It was said that at the age of 10, Bollistan, donning armor donated by others, became the enigmatic knight and participated in the tournament held at Blackport. While others mocked him, Prince Duncan expressed his empathy. During the tournament, no one dared to challenge Prince Duncan except for Bollistan, which led to Duncan bestowing upon him the title of Fearless. At the age of 16, Bollistan anonymously entered the winter tournament in King's Landing, where he triumphed over the diminutive Prince Duncan and the tall captain of the Kingsguard, Ser Duncan, ultimately being knighted by King Aegon V himself. A remarkable joust propelled his career to success, and he also proved himself on the battlefield. In the Battle of the Ninepenny Kings, he charged into the midst of the Golden Company and single-handedly dispatched the last of the Blackfyre pretenders, the Savage Maegor, quelling the rebellion against the Blackfyre claim to the throne. This valor earned him an immortal name, and from that moment forth, his name resonated throughout the 7 kingdoms. At the age of 23, upon the recommendation of Captain Ser Gerald Hightower, King Jaehaerys II draped him in the white cloak. Following the death of Jaehaerys II, Bollistan remained loyal to the reigning King Aegon Targaryen II as a member of the Kingsguard. During the rebellion in the Vale 4 years ago, the Mad King was taken hostage and detained in the town of Moat Cailin for 6 long months. The then hand of the king, Tywin Lannister, had planned a forceful siege, but Bollistan proposed to venture alone to rescue the king, and Tywin granted him a day. Many folk songs celebrated Selmy's audacious act. He disguised himself as a masked beggar, approached the castle of Brownstone, and before being detected, assassinated the guards upon the walls, making his way to the dungeons to liberate the king. However, as he led the king away, he was discovered. Ser Miri vanquished a pair of guards and Simon Horad, avenging the fallen Galwingot of the Kingsguard. He and the king fled towards the stables, cutting down foes along the way, and despite an arrow lodged in his chest, he galloped away from the town of Twilight Vale. Following the insurrection in Twilight Vale, the Darkland family was annihilated, and the Horad family, who had allied with them and pledged fealty, was nearly extinguished as well. At the behest of Ser Miri, King Elerys spared the life of the young Dantos Horad. Undoubtedly, he was a formidable and honorable knight. Besides him, Prince Rhaegar and 2 members of the Kingsguard also made their appearance. Rhaegar sounded the horn of Brandon's direwolf, while Giro Hadel opted for Oswell's white shield, and Prince Lewin Martell chose to challenge Jorn Royce. Jason stood resolutely at the northern end of the tournament grounds, claiming he felt no anxiety, an assertion he knew to be false. A man of great repute cannot falter. Having endured thus far, he must not yield. As the horn sounded, Jason charged forward, and in the first round, both knights' lances shattered against each other's shields. Surveying the field, none of the 8 knights had unseated their mounts. When the spectators realized all 8 lances had splintered, a tremendous roar of applause erupted, akin to a grand final. Discarding the broken lance, an unknown squire presented him with a new one, which Jason steadied, charging once more. As the distance closed, Jason struck at Sir Bollistan's white shield from the side. aiming for his opponent's chest, but he missed. Ballistan's lance, however, struck Jason's chest with great force, nearly unseating him. Returning to the northern end, Jason had no time to spare for others, taking the lance offered by Fleming, still shaken. He had nearly lost. Now was not the time for flamboyance, but rather to engage in a test of endurance. He charged again, leveling his lance, aiming directly for Ballistan's chest. His opponent would raise his shield to deflect, and Jason would cling tightly to prevail. Simultaneously, Jason lifted his shield to guard, but Ballistan's lance tip suddenly ascended. The blunt end grazed his helmet, nearly dislodging it, leaving Jason dazed as cheers erupted around him. Reaching the southern end, he readjusted his helmet, discovering Brandon had been unseated. While Prince Rhaegar raised a new lance in preparation for the procession, Jason, along with 5 other knights, spurred their steeds forward once more. This time, he faced a worthy adversary. He could not relent. In his narrowed field of vision, Ballistan, clad in white armor, gripped his lance in his right hand and held his shield in the left, his body swaying with his white steed, the lance tip quivering, the triangular pennant fluttering, leaving one to ponder how he would strike. Under the sun, the two figures raced towards each other, crimson and snow white colliding once again. Chapter 13, Invitation. Bang! The lance exploded, the snow white cloak fluttering across the field. No one was unseated. They discarded their lances, seized new ones, and charged again. Elia felt the earth tremble beneath Jason's advance. Her husband, Rhaegar, had concluded his procession and returned to his black tent. She prayed for the warriors, hoping for Jason's victory. Though her gaze was fixed on the arena, the sudden gasps drew her attention to the first track. Jason remained mounted, having exchanged his shield and taken up a new lance, once again charging towards Sir Ballistan. The source of the astonishment was the 4th track, where her uncle, Prince Laven Maethel, had unseated Sir Jorah Royce. As she watched the squire rush towards the fallen Sir Jorah, Elia shifted her focus, praying fervently for Jason's safety, beseeching the Holy Mother to spare him from harm. Now, only 2 pairs of competitors remained in the arena, 1 red knight and 3 white knights. Sir Gero Hightower and Oswell Riverine were evenly matched, their contest yielding no clear victor. After 3 more rounds of fierce combat, Sir Gero Hightower relinquished his shield and fell from his steed, marking a decisive end to the battle on the 3rd track. Now, only the 1st track remained. Jason and the fearless Sir Ballistan Selmy had shattered the 9th lance. In the 10th round, both champion and challenger found themselves unseated. As he released his lance, Jason's gaze was abruptly drawn upward. It was over. He thought to himself that this joust had come to an end, never imagining he would not claim victory. The ground rushed up from behind, and after considerable effort, he managed to rise, only to find that the white knight had also just regained his footing. It seemed he had unseated him as well. Around him, discussions erupted about how to determine the victor. Some argued that Sir Ballistan should be declared the winner due to his numerous strikes at vital points, thus scoring higher. Others contended that Sir Jason was the true champion, as he had risen before Sir Ballistan. However, the former argument garnered more support, likely due to the greater number of bets placed on Ballistan's victory. In the center of the stands, a debate ensued. At that moment, Prince Rhaegar rode into the arena atop his steed. Why not provide both knights with weapons and allow them to continue their contest dismounted? The nobles in the stands expressed their agreement, and Count Walter stepped forward to announce that weapons would be provided for both knights, and the match would resume, with a gentle reminder to cease at the appropriate moment. Fleming rushed towards Jason, clutching his double-handed sword. Jason discarded his left-hand shield, grasped the gilded hilt, and drew the massive sword, preparing for battle. He feared that Ballistan's swordsmanship might surpass his own equestrian and lance skills. In this context of restraint, he could not rely solely on his healing abilities to endure. Otherwise, he would be perceived as a knight unable to accept defeat. Jason resolved to take the initiative, leveraging his immense strength to create a miracle, one that belied his physical form. The horns sounded once more, and Jason charged forward with remarkable speed, as if he had not just been thrown from his horse burdened by heavy armor. The great sword cleaved through the air with lightning-like ferocity. No matter how seasoned Ballistan was, he could not have anticipated such a fierce attack from this young knight so soon after his fall. He himself had not yet fully recovered. Ballistan narrowly evaded the strike, causing Jason to exhale in relief. He had doubted whether his blow could cleave both sword and rider in one fell swoop. Jason then swung from the lower left to the upper right, but Ballistan, caught off guard, raised his sword to parry. With a resounding clang, Jason deftly deflected Ballistan's longsword and then pressed the massive blade against his white armor, surprising everyone with the swiftness of the duel's conclusion, which surpassed even the speed of their initial combat. Balliston's hands tingled from the shock, and he was astounded by Jason's formidable strength. The stands erupted in fervent applause. Elia glanced at the exuberant Ashera beside her, hoping to temper her enthusiasm, only to find it a Herculean task to suppress her own urge to cheer, let alone to reign in Ashera's exuberance. Jason approached Balliston, grasping his hand with one hand while raising the giant sword aloft to declare his triumph. The 4 champions now standing in the arena were Sir Jason Lannister, Sir Rhaegar Targaryen, Sir Oswell Went, and Prince Lewin Martell. Their displayed prowess deterred any challengers, as the prospect of losing a match, and consequently their armor and steed, seemed an unwise gamble, especially after several aspiring knights had already been unseated in the days prior. Consequently, Count Walter had no choice but to announce that the final battle would commence that afternoon, thereby concluding the originally planned week-long tournament on its 6th day. Jason, disinterested in returning to Harrenhal, instructed Fleming to inform the servants to deliver provisions to his tent. While enjoying a goblet of wine, members of his small circle arrived to congratulate him on his knighthood. Jason then asked Fleming to arrange a meal for 6, akin to a small feast, which likely prompted the Harrenhal servants to mutter their grievances about him behind his back. Ashera sat beside Jason, unabashedly joining in the jovial conversation with the group. Although she had recently joined their circle, she quickly integrated herself into the camaraderie. Jason, once this tournament concludes, would you care to accompany me and Eddard to the Vale? I assure you, you have never beheld a castle as precariously situated as Eagle's Nest. Robert proposed enthusiastically. We could spend a few days at Eagle's Nest, and then join forces for the wedding of Bran and Tully's Caitlin at Riverrun. What a splendid plan. His excitement grew, and he promptly poured himself another drink. Yet, I fear there may be no wedding to attend, but rather a war to engage in. Is it just the 3 of us then? What of Benjen and Lyanna? Will they not join us? Could we possibly persuade Lyanna to come along? We have no intention of further roving. After traversing most of the 7 kingdoms from Linda Town to Harrenhal, I am quite reluctant to endure more travel. I shall simply accompany my brother Bran to Riverrun. Lyanna replied. Ashera, however, seemed somewhat disheartened. You all are so free, unlike me. Just the other day, my father sent word via Raven to Harrenhal, instructing me to return to Starfall without providing any reason. Fear not, for once you and Jason are wed, you can visit us in the North, Vale, or Stormlands. Robert reassured her, accustomed to Ashera's forthright nature. He then turned to Jason, asking, What say you? Will you accompany us to Eagle's Nest? I may very well be unable to avert the impending conflict, Lyanna remarked, and there is a chance that she may depart with Rhaegar. If I were to return to Eagle's Nest with Robert, the timing of the impending conflict remains uncertain. However, fostering a good rapport with him can never be a misstep. Moreover, when the war erupts, due to Jaime being held as a hostage in King's Landing, my father may still be reluctant to mobilize his forces. Although I now exist, and Casterly Rock would not be devoid of a satisfactory heir, his utmost expectations undoubtedly lie with his firstborn. Should I enlist in Robert's army, provided I remain discreet, I would not pose a threat to Jaime, and both Robert and Ned would have no grounds to deny my contributions as a Lannister in the aftermath of battle. Consequently, father would no longer need to resort to underhanded tactics to demonstrate his allegiance to Robert, as depicted in the television series. Very well, once I claim victory, I shall accompany you all. Jason brimmed with confidence. Regardless of the outcome, his resolve would not falter before that insufferable prince. Chapter 14. The Queen of Love and Beauty. The decisive confrontation commenced as Lord Walder announced the rules. The champion of the 3rd lane would challenge the champion of the 1st, while the 4th would take on the 2nd. Thus, Jason faced Sir Oswell Went, and Prince Rhaegar clashed with Prince Lewin Martell. Oswell donned gleaming white armor, distinguishable only by a black bat emblem, the sigil of House Went, adorning his helmet. Jason, meanwhile, was clad in Jaime's plate armor, its heavy steel adorned with a dark crimson glaze, a scarlet cloak cascading gracefully behind him. The outer garment that had previously shielded his armor had become tattered during the preceding days of jousting, so he had opted to forego it entirely. The familiar blare of the horn resounded, and Jason, alongside Prince Rhaegar, surged towards the southern end, lowering his lance. He raised his shield to guard the majority of his left side, angling it to deflect potential thrusts. The clamor of the crowd faded into the distant roar of waves as the Lionheart galloped forth. The lance struck against the white shield, the left-hand shield colliding with the lance's tip. The familiar crack of impact echoed, and Jason steadied himself, advancing southward with his shattered lance. Discarding the lance, he pressed on. Sir Oswell could withstand Jason's assault for only 8 passes before tumbling from his steed, while Lewin Martell and Rhaegar shattered 10 lances before concluding their duel. The ultimate confrontation would be between Jason Lannister and Rhaegar Targaryen. The interlude was unusually prolonged. After savoring a few cups of wine, Jason prepared to re-enter the fray. 80 yards away, Rhaegar's white warhorse neighed restlessly, pawing at the sparse grass. While the Lionheart remained remarkably composed, Fleming handed Jason his shield and lance, uttering, "May the gods be with you." Jason slipped his left arm through the strap, gripping the hilt tightly, while raising the lance with his right. Rhaegar mirrored his actions, clad in black armor, wielding a dragon shield, his helmet adorned with 3 roaring enamel dragon heads and flames. "I shall vanquish him here. I will not permit him the opportunity to insult her. Perhaps I should slay him now, though it is a blunted lance. It may still possess formidable power if I aim for his head. Yet, such a course of action would not be prudent. It transcends mere honor. Who can foresee the repercussions of such a deed? Besides, I ought not to harbor hatred towards him. Ultimately, my perceptions are shaped solely by the lines I have deduced from the television series of my previous life. I am not well acquainted with him. Who can assert that the reality of our world must unfold as scripted in a television drama? Nevertheless, he is my adversary now, and I shall endeavor to vanquish him. I shall seize the championship." The trumpet sounds once more. In an instant, Jason lightly prodded the lion's heart with his spur and surged forward. Lowering his lance and tightening his thighs, he became one with his steed. The helmet grew stifling, yet Jason had grown accustomed to it. Within the narrow slit of his formidable helm, there was only Rhaegar, no spectators, no throngs. He beheld the soaring dragon. The nostrils of Prince Rhaegar's white steed flared wide, sending countless clods of mud and grass flying beneath its hoofs. He released his lance at the very last moment, a perilous decision, yet his confidence was evident. Jason's lance was aimed squarely at the prince's chest, his hand and weapon a unified force. Ultimately, the tip of his lance struck Rhaegar's shield between the 2 dragon heads, piercing a swirl of painted flames, while Jason shattered Rhaegar's lance with his own resounding golden lion shield. Upon reaching the southern end, he replaced his lance, and the competition resumed. This clash was a mere replica of Jason's confrontation with Balistan, the sole difference being that neither had faltered thus far. The dragon and the golden lion charged relentlessly, shattered lances littering the ground. Finally, in the 12th round, Jason's lance struck the prince's chest with resounding force, causing Rhaegar to tumble from his mount. A thunderous cheer erupted as Jason exchanged his lance for a new one. Galloping a lap around the arena before halting before the royal box, he saluted the Mad King, Lord Walter, Lady Hightower, and the fair maiden with his lance. The Earl rose to declare that the ultimate champion of the Harrenhal tournament was Sir Jason Lannister. Having spoken, he removed the garland from his daughter's head. This blue rose garland symbolized the Queen of Love and Beauty, which he lifted with both hands. The crowd erupted in applause. Jason's face radiated excitement as he adhered to the customs he had observed at the Lannister tournament, delicately lifting the garland from the Earl's hands. He noticed that the Mad King wore a hostile expression, brimming with animosity. He longed to thrust his lance at him, yet refrained, deeming it unworthy of spoiling his mood. Fortunately, with the helm still upon his head, no one could discern his expression. Jason raised his lance, guiding his steed in a circle around the royal box. In truth, the Mad King had mentioned his betrothal to the Dane family on the very day he first summoned Jason, and during the inaugural banquet. Everyone had observed the Dornish girl dancing with Jason. Thus, the placement of this garland was not difficult to surmise. Jason halted his horse before Sheila Dane, offering the title of Queen of Love and Beauty to his fiancée with his lance. The applause thundered. Sheila blushed deeply, encouraged by Elia, which emboldened her to speak. "Thank you, Sir Jason." Jason saluted with his lance, parading amidst the applause before returning to the center of the box. The Earl announced that Sir Jason Lannister would receive the champion's prize, just as I had informed last year, a bounty of 10,000 gold dragons. Even though it was not the first time he had heard it, Jason still could not believe that he could amass such a fortune in just a few days. The servants lifted the prepared chest filled with golden dragons into Jason's tent. Upon returning, Fleming hurried to assist Jason in shedding his armor and donning the crimson and gold attire exclusive to House Lannister, in preparation for the final banquet of the evening. "Fleming, summon 2 servants and accompany me. We must retrieve the items from the Tower of the Burning King," Jason commanded. "At your service, my lord, but truth be told, you need only us," Fleming replied. "Indeed, I merely intend to draft another letter," Jason said with a smile. Once back in the bedroom of the Tower of the Burning King, Jason awaited the arrival of a servant from Harrenhal, bearing ink and sealing wax, before he seated himself at the table to compose his missive. Meanwhile, Fleming busied himself with tidying up. which consisted of a few garments and the breastplate from Jason's days as a squire. After completing the task, Jason instructed him to return to the tent. Upon finishing the letter, he gently blew on it, checking its contents one last time. Dear Father, your son Jason Lannister has been knighted by Sir Arthur Dayne. A fact you may already be aware of. I participated in the jousting tournament, and you need not worry. I emerged victorious, bringing honor to House Lannister. Even Duke Tywin would surely be astonished that I managed to unseat all the knights who challenged me. Jaime was unable to attend the tournament, having returned to King's Landing early, a detail you likely know. Furthermore, I plan to visit the Eyrie alongside Duke Robert Baratheon. I have heard that you and his father, Duke Stephen Baratheon, were once friends, though you have never mentioned it. As for the 10,000 golden dragons, I intend to keep a portion, while the remainder shall be entrusted to Uncle Kevin for safe return. Please ensure some is given to Cersei and Tyrion as a long overdue gift, especially Tyrion, as I have scarcely seen him since I left Casterly Rock for the City of the Mark to serve Sir Adam Marbrand when I was 11. He was merely 4 at the time. Cersei, however, did meet with me when she and Tywin passed through Gold Tooth on their way back to Casterly Rock. Just as Adam and I were setting out from the City of the Mark, en route to Harrenhal Keep, where we were received by Count Leo Lannister. After ensuring all was in order, he rolled the letter, secured it with a cord, poured molten wax upon it, and pressed his seal into the warm substance, before making his way to the crow's nest. Chapter 15. Farewell. You intend to go to the Eyrie? At this time, Kevin set down his wine cup. Precisely because it is this time, I wish to go to the Eyrie. The more friends, the better, Jason replied as he took a seat beside him. I have taken 200 golden dragons. I would appreciate it if you could carry the rest back for me. That is no trouble. Your father, do not concern yourself. I have already dispatched the letter to Casterly Rock. Kevin nodded, speaking softly. I did not expect you to best Prince Rhaegar. That matter was not for us to assist with, but it is somewhat of a compensation. I did not do it for him, Jason refrained from saying. But it appeared the rumors were indeed true. In this contest, the distinction between reality and illusion has become irrelevant. You have emerged as the champion, possibly the youngest victor in the history of mounted tournaments. Kevin patted him on the shoulder. Perhaps the 7 gods truly favor you. The Lannister family is destined to grow even more formidable. For the Lannisters. For the Lannisters. Jason raised his goblet, toasting with Kevin. Prince Rhaegar navigated through the crowd, approaching the two with purpose. With his silver hair and violet eyes, he epitomized the Targaryen lineage. Sir Kevin, Sir Jason, he acknowledged with a slight nod and a smile. Turning to Jason, he remarked, this marks our first formal introduction. I have heard much of you from Elia. Indeed, your valor is impressive. He continued, I must retrieve my armor and steed shortly. There was no trace of ire from his defeat, only grace. I have heard of a Sir Jason Lannister who commanded the forces of the Westerlands in the War of the Ninepenny Kings. He was a great knight. Indeed, he was my grandfather. Tragically, he perished in the Battle of Bloodstone Isle. My parents named me Jason in his honor. He was well loved. The other Sir Jason Lannister was the youngest son of Duke Gerald Lannister and his second wife, Roanne Weber, brother to Tywald, Tyon, and Tydos, and also the father of Joanna. Tydos was not a warrior. Thus, when the War of the Ninepenny Kings erupted, Jason led an army of 1,000 knights and 10,000 soldiers into battle. Yet, in 260, Jason fell at Bloodstone Isle. It is regrettable that I cannot meet this knight in person, but I am certain your future accomplishments will not disappoint him, Rhaegar said earnestly. He is a noble prince, perhaps destined to become a good king. Thank you. May I take my leave? Of course. Jason departed at an opportune moment, leaving Kevin and Rhaegar to continue their discourse. They were deliberating on matters of significance, yet it mattered little. If that particular issue remained unchanged, discussions would bear no fruit. The Mad King was absent, insisting on boycotting the banquet, remaining with his retinue of courtiers and some nobles from the Riverlands and the Vale in a tent by the tournament grounds at Harrenhal. Engaged in their own discussions, the hall's minstrel once again sang of the Bear and the Maiden Fair. He was the champion of the singing competition, known as Hamish. His voice, indeed enchanting, found no dancers now. Everyone was occupied with feasting, drinking, and gossiping, occasionally glancing in my direction. My victory seemed to have shattered something. Perhaps their expectations, or some other ulterior motive. Jason approached Elia and her companion, where Asha was also present. They smiled and invited him to sit beside Asha. Chattering animatedly around the champion and the queen of love and beauty, they discussed matters of marriage, as if a wedding were imminent. Jason then noticed Asha still adorned with the blue rose crown. Asha embraced the style of a Dornish maiden, playfully engaging with her companions. Thankfully, the Mad King was not present. As the surroundings cleared, It was only then that Elia could engage in conversation with Jason. I heard from Ashera that you intend to travel to Eagle's Nest. Indeed, Ashera mentioned her desire to return to Starfall. Will you head back to Dragonstone directly? Or do you plan to accompany her on a trip to Dorne? Regardless, do not linger in King's Landing. The king has stated that Queen Rhaenyra wishes to meet with Rhaenys and Aegon, and they have already been brought to King's Landing. I also plan to return to King's Landing with the king for a while. Elia smiled. Jason doubted that she had not caught wind of the situation, yet her demeanor did not suggest any concern. Was the Mad King truly resorting to hostage-taking? The tension had escalated to such an extent? What about Prince Rhaegar? He will not be accompanying you. He will indeed come, but before that, he has matters to attend to in Dorne. Well, what business could Rhaegar have in Dorne that necessitates offering hostages to dispel suspicion? Elia perceived Jason's unease and reassured him, do not fret. It is merely a trip to King's Landing. You are now the champion. Why should you worry? Her son and daughter are currently in King's Landing, and I cannot sway her. Rhaegar needs her there to stabilize the situation. In the end, Jason could only say, I will not allow anyone to harm you. I promise. Elia paused slightly. I believe you. Oberyn has said similar words before. Alas, he is not here in Harrenhal this time. And you two have not seen each other in quite a while, have you? Yes, but if he were to attend the tournament, he would likely be the first to challenge me. Jason attempted to maintain a serious expression, managing a strained smile. However, I believe he may no longer be your match. Elia lightened the mood, returning to casual conversation, no longer so tense. Jason too found it unwise to pursue serious topics at that moment. Just then, Robert's voice resonated from the center of the hall, proclaiming that the champion is now a Lannister. Why not sing a Lannister song? It was evident he was inebriated, and with the Mad King absent, there was no one to intervene. Hamish cleared his throat, resumed playing, and then sang that familiar tune. What merit do you possess? The Lord proudly declares, must I bow and submit? Different colors, equal might, each demonstrating their prowess in ranking. The red lion battles the gold lion, claws sharp and merciless, striking deadly blows. Do not forget your son. Oh, he speaks thus. Lord of Casterly Rock says so. Yet today, in every rainy season, the rain weeps in the hall, yet no soul is present. Yet today, in every rainy season, the rain weeps in the hall, yet no spirit lingers. The woods to the north of Harrenhal were lush and verdant, with the pines lining King's Road forming a legion of silent, gray-green soldiers. Meanwhile, the procession awaiting on King's Road resembled an army, composed of knights, squires, noble ladies, merchants, and others. They hail from the north, the west, the Riverlands, and the Vale. Now, they all embark together from Harrenhal, only to part ways in the small town of Lord Harroway, heading east, north, and west. As they bid farewell at this moment, Jason ponders when they may reunite. He knows not the answer, merely a participant in this troop, destined to tread one step at a time. Chapter 16. Freedom and Family. Westeros boasts numerous vital waterways, among which the complex Trident River system in the central region stands out, characterized by its many tributaries, abundant flow, an extensive basin that shapes the unique terrain of the Riverlands. The Trident River flows from north to south, comprising the Green Fork, the Blue Fork, and the Red Fork, which converge northwest of Lord Harroway's town before finally pouring into Crab's Bay at the Narrow Sea through the mouth at Salt Pans. Before Jason lies the Trident River, and after a day of marching, they have arrived here along the King's Road. Had he set out alone, he would have reached Lord Harroway's town by now. However, Robert, incapacitated by drunkenness the previous night, could only be placed in a cart borrowed from Lord Walter of Amber, and he did not awaken until noon today. Ahead, a tavern stands at the crossroads. Fleming remarked, the young squire always craves to prove himself. He volunteered to scout ahead. Of course, a greater likelihood is that Jason has acquired two more squires, Rosolford and Stephen Swift. Lord Leo and Sir Harris wish for their sons to serve as Jason's squires. The former had once entertained him in King's Landing, while the latter is the father-in-law of Uncle Kevin, unable to refuse. And with Jason genuinely in need of attendance, an affluent knight like him ought not to be accompanied by but a single squire. Jason carries nearly 600 gold dragons, 200 of which stem from rewards, the rest being his original savings along with ransoms paid by other knights. I recall having seen a place when passing through here earlier. Let us dine there before hastening to Lord Harroway's town, Jason suggested, surveying his surroundings. Most would likely lodge at the tavern tonight or camp nearby. I have no desire to squeeze in here. What about you? Let it be so, Seven Hells. My head still spins from just mounting the horse, Robert concurred. Jason chose not to join Kevin and the others, preferring to remain with his small circle. The tavern, situated at the fork north of the river, is run by a portly woman with grayish-white hair, chewing tobacco. Upon seeing a throng of noble knights, she immediately greeted them with a wide smile, her dark red teeth resembling blood, a rather frightening sight. Jason settled into a relatively clean spot. Bring forth all your food, and do so swiftly. With that, he placed 5 silver stags on the table. The tavern keeper promptly seized the coins, bowing graciously with a smile before turning to issue orders in the kitchen. Standard Lannister style, Lyanna quipped as she sat down, "That food is hardly worth such a sum." The others expressed their gratitude for Jason's generosity, taking their seats as well. The quintessential Stark, frugal and austere, Jason spread his hands, declaring that even the most impoverished noble could afford these few silver deer. Indeed, yet the food hardly warranted such a price. Eddard joined in, exchanging a glance with Robert, and sighed, remarking on the standard Stark demeanor, frugal and rigid. Brandon, however, insisted he would not bear the blame for this. As twilight approached, Inns typically continued to prepare meals and roast meat at this hour. Soon enough, a young server hurried over, presenting them with plates of bread, alongside succulent slices of roasted meat, glistening with hot juices. Another fork bore small onions, red peppers, and plump mushrooms. Jason and Robert immediately began to devour the feast, while the server ran off to fetch them wine and roasted chicken. "I wish to stay here tonight and visit Saltmarsh tomorrow morning," Lyanna suddenly announced. Having kept this plan under wraps, leaving those present momentarily taken aback, Brandon inquired, "What prompted this sudden decision to go there? Weren't we supposed to return to Riverrun together?" "It's nothing, merely a weariness of the long journey along the King's Road. I wish to clear my mind and see the confluence of the Trident as it meets the sea," she replied. "Very well, I shall have Ethan, Joffrey, and Keller accompany you," Brandon agreed without further thought. Ethan Glover, Joffrey Marys, and Keller Royce were his attendants, with no current hostilities and the distance to Saltmarsh being minimal. Along with the fact that many merchants would also depart for the port at Saltmarsh in the morning, the 3 attendants would suffice to ensure her safety. Jason, however, harbored doubts regarding Lyanna's intentions. Was her sudden separation from the group a rendezvous with Rhaegar? After all, Saltmarsh had a port, and there would be no shortage of ships ready to depart. At that moment, the server returned with a cake, freshly baked by the innkeeper. Jason took a bite. It was delightful, soaked in honey and richly aromatic, a pleasant surprise compared to the other fare. After the meal, everyone prepared to depart. Lyanna approached the innkeeper to secure a room, and it was then Jason learned the stout woman's name was Martha Hyde. After arranging accommodations and stowing their belongings, Jason and Brandon mounted their horses, ready to set off for the Earl of Harroway's village while there was still light. Lyanna stood by the road to bid farewell to Jason and his companions. Jason intentionally lingered at the back of the group, calling out to Lyanna after Brandon and the others had moved ahead a distance. "What is it, Sir Jason? Have you decided to stay behind?" Lyanna noticed him halting his horse. Jason turned to Flement, Russell, and Stephen, instructing, "You may go ahead. I will join you shortly." The 3 had no choice but to ride on. "Lyanna, I have always believed that pursuing freedom is commendable, venturing wherever one desires to go, and being with those one truly loves. To chase after the enchanting tales sung by bards," Jason said earnestly. "So what are you trying to convey?" Lyanna inquired, her smile fading. "Yet, those were merely enchanting tales. I had pondered such matters before, even drawing close to them, yet lacked the capacity to pursue them." He spoke to himself, indifferent to whether she was attentively listening. "After living in this world for over a decade, I am acutely aware that such things can only exist in the narratives of singers. Family, duty, and honor are paramount. My father imparted this wisdom to us, particularly emphasizing the significance of family. Ultimately, we occupy elevated positions, and every word and action must serve the interests of our kin. This I firmly believe. I once lost my own family, and in this lifetime, I shall protect my family with unwavering resolve." Upon hearing this, I almost thought you hailed from the Tully family. "Surely, that is their family motto." Is she attempting to change the subject? Jason was uncertain, yet her demeanor was impeccable. Regardless, one cannot deceive oneself. Even if you have truly made a decision, you ought to inform your family. With that, Jason reined in his horse and turned to leave. "I could indeed confide in Brandon, yet due to my victory, Rhaegar did not present the Queen of Love and Beauty to Lyanna as depicted in the series. Surely, no one would believe my words. Robert might even turn against me for insulting Lyanna's honor. Every utterance and action should benefit the family. While I profess this, can I truly uphold it? How should I choose? My intention to rescue Elia does not seem to align with familial gain. I merely wish to embrace her into my family. Nevertheless, saving her could indeed ease relations with Dorne and House Targaryen." If I were to become an archenemy of Daenerys Targaryen, could I safeguard my family? Though she seems yet unborn, the Mad King possesses only 2 sons, Rhaegar and Viserys. Furthermore, winter approaches, and the strength of dragons will prove indispensable in the future. Thus, I cannot allow Daenerys to perish easily. Indeed, rescuing Elia is not an act of reckless freedom. It is also for the benefit of the family. Jason persuaded himself. Yet, can I truly deceive myself? Chapter 17. The Eyrie, the town of Lord Harrenhal, is situated by the Trident River in the Vale, named after the long-extinct Harrenhal family. During the reign of Aegon I, the Harrenhal family acquired Harrenhal, having once allied through marriage with the cruel Mage, only to be utterly annihilated by her. Presently, Lord Harrenhal's town belongs to House Royce, a noble family of the Vale, their sigil depicting a brown double-headed horse upon green waves. Here stands a sept with 7 domes, a 2-story inn, and a stone round tower keep. The destination for Jason and his companions is this inn, which is cleaner and more comfortable than the one at the crossroads, though naturally, it commands a higher price. Lacking any coins, Jason simply handed over a silver stag, securing accommodations for the group, much to the innkeeper's delight. That night, the haunting dream returned, a chilling sensation, submerged in water, the piercing feeling in my limbs and head, followed by an intense burning pain. Jason awoke with a shout, his arm muscles contracting, steel claws emerging from between his fingers. The metallic ambience surrounding him was somewhat disorienting. This was the location where Wolverine was injected with adamantium. Suddenly, a dark mass appeared in his line of sight, swiftly engulfing the surroundings. Jason jolted upright, drenched in sweat, as the bone claws from his hands gradually retracted into his arms. It was a memory of this body, a recollection of Wolverine. And the pain embedded in that memory felt so real that Jason believed he might not endure it any longer. He summoned a servant to fetch water. Preparing for a bath, the servant, roused from slumber, could hardly express his irritation. "My lord, you must wait a moment. Boiling water takes time." "No need. Cold water will suffice." Jason did not wish to inconvenience anyone unnecessarily. He was merely uncomfortable from the sweat that had compelled him to awaken the servant. "As you command." "My lord." The servant promptly set about preparing the water. Once Jason finished his bath, he had no intention of returning to sleep. The day was nearly dawning, and the bed remained damp with perspiration. Brandon, Aiden, and the others gradually awoke. They tidied their belongings and had a modest breakfast of bread, roasted fowl, and a few cups of wine. After their meal, Jason, Robert, and Aiden awaited the arrival of the noble knights lodging at the Crossroads Inn, intending to travel together to the valley. This was primarily due to the perilous route through the Moonlight Mountains, which were home to numerous Highland clans. Traveling in a group was certainly safer. Brandon would not proceed to Eagle's Nest City. He intended to head west toward Flowing City, where there were no Highland clans along the way, planning to set off ahead of the others. Ultimately, Jason refrained from disclosing his speculations about Lyanna to him. Once they reunited with the main party, they set off. The Broad King's road gradually transformed into a narrow stone path, and the surrounding terrain shifted from the plains of the Riverlands to increasingly steep and treacherous hills. In the distance, jagged, snow-capped peaks emerged on the horizon. Their procession was grand. Nearly the entirety of the valley's knights were assembled, thus they encountered no Highland clans along the way. However, their pace was not swift. It took them 7 days before Jason finally beheld the fabled Bloodgate fortress. The Bloodgate comprised a series of battlements perched upon the cliffs flanking the mountain path leading from the Moonlight Mountains to Eileen Valley. 2 watchtowers clung to the rock face, connected by a weathered arch bridge of gray stone. This location was easy to defend yet challenging to assault. During the Age of Heroes, countless soldiers had perished here, yet the gorge remained unconquered. The path narrowed to barely accommodate 4 riders side by side, and silent faces peered down at them from arrow slits, battlements, and stone bridges. As they neared the summit, a knight approached on horseback to greet them. Robert introduced him to Jason, stating, "This is Sir Morton Waywood of the Bloodgate Knights." The Waywood family of Iron Oak City was one of the valley's prominent noble houses, renowned for their adherence to etiquette, their heraldry depicting a black shattered wheel on a green field. Sir Morton was indeed diligent in his duties, having foregone participation in the tournament at Harrenburg. "Who seeks passage through the Bloodgate?" Morton called out, as he could hardly fail to recognize such a large gathering of valley nobles and their banners. This must surely pertain to the regulations governing passage through the Bloodgate. Robb stepped forward, responding loudly, "I am Robb Stark, Duke of Winterfell. And these are the noble lords of the Vale who have returned from the tournament." Typically disdainful of elaborate formalities, Robb refrained from complaints this time. a testament to his genuine respect for Jon Arryn, the Duke. They conversed for a while longer, leaving Jason to wait amid the crowd. Once pleasantries concluded, Robb inquired, "Shall we enter the Vale? In the name of Jon Arryn, Duke of Eagle's Nest, guardian of the Vale, and protector of the Eastern Marches, I grant you passage and implore you to uphold peace in his name," Sir Mortan Velwood replied. "Let us proceed." Thus, the assembly mounted their steeds, following him through the shadow of the bloody gate. Upon emerging from the other side, a breathtaking panorama unfolded before them. Verdant fields, azure skies, and snow-capped peaks basked in the morning light. At that moment, the Vale was enveloped in a golden glow. The valley stretched out before them, reaching towards the mist-laden east, a realm of tranquility and serenity, shielded by mountains on all sides. Within lay rich black soil, wide, gentle rivers, and countless lakes, shimmering like mirrors beneath the sun. As they ventured into the western section of the valley, the path began to wind downward after passing through the final mountain pass, descending to the base of a towering mountain, nearly 2 miles high. The gorge here was narrow, easily traversable in less than half a day. With the northern mountains looming close by, the tallest peak, known as the Giant's Lance, soared above, its summit rising 3.5 miles into the cold mist. The torrent named Alessa's Tear cascaded from that towering western ridge, and even from such a distance, Jason could discern the gleaming silver ribbon contrasting sharply against the dark rocks. Robb approached Jason, gesturing towards it. Right there, beside Alessa's Tear, if you look closely, and the sunlight happens to illuminate the castle walls, you will see Eagle's Nest. Jason was utterly awestruck by the formidable terrain. Though he had heard tales of Eagle's Nest being impregnable, witnessing it firsthand was an entirely different experience. Eagle's Nest boasted 7 lofty towers, resembling pure white daggers piercing the heavens, standing amidst the clouds, where one could feel the clouds beneath their feet from the battlements. Eddard also stepped forward to enlighten Jason. "This is astonishingly high, far surpassing Castle Black, truly worthy of its name, the height of glory." Jason exclaimed, "How long until we arrive? I can scarcely contain my eagerness to ascend." "We shall reach the base by late afternoon today, but it will take another day to climb to the top," Robb replied. Sir Mortan Velwood assured that he would first send a raven to inform Eagle's Nest and Moon Door of their arrival. Someone also brought forth spirited, well-groomed horses familiar with the mountain trails from the stables. Consequently, Jason chose to leave his attendant Rosso and his steed, Lionheart, behind, trusting Rosso to care for Lionheart. After all, it was reassuring to have someone familiar, and throughout their journey, Rosso had demonstrated his adeptness in tending to the horses. Were he not noble, he would surely excel as a stableman. They rested for less than an hour before resuming their journey towards the valley's plains below. The noble knights of the Vale began to part ways, each returning to their respective strongholds and villages. The slope beneath their horses' hooves gradually lessened. With the sun now setting in the west, the path widened and straightened ahead. As they arrived at the valley plain, their pace quickened, and they wasted no time in hastening their journey. Even so, by the time they reached the sturdy castle at the foot of Giantess Spear Mountain, darkness had enveloped the land. Torches blazed atop the battlements, and the crescent moon danced upon the inky waters of the moat. The drawbridge had been raised, and the iron gate had descended. This was Moongate Castle. As the procession approached the fortress, Robert remarked that the banner-bearer sent by the Bloodgate Knights was beckoning to those within the tower by the moat. "Lord Nestor's stronghold. He must be awaiting us," he added. "Take another look above." Jason lifted his gaze, his sight ascending higher and higher. Initially, he beheld rocks and trees, the towering mountains cloaked in the night, as dark as a starless sky. Gradually, he noticed the ethereal fireworks in the heights. They were the towers of a castle embedded in the sheer cliffs, their lights resembling orange eyes surveying the earth below. Above that, there was an even taller tower, and above it another, almost a twinkling spark in the night sky. Finally, he discerned a glimmering expanse of white light under the moon, Eyrie Castle. Jason heard Fleming murmuring, clearly astonished as well. Chapter 18. The Erroneous Spring. How do we ascend? Jason inquired. Stone steps had been carved into the mountain, but they were too steep and narrow for horses. Mules could manage, albeit with difficulty. Along the way, there were 3 fortresses, Crag Castle, Snow Mountain Castle, and Long Sky Castle, with mules able to reach Long Sky Castle at most. "Then we walk," Jason speculated. "Indeed, the path beyond is too perilous even for mules. We can either walk or opt for a basket." Eyrie Castle sits atop the mountain directly above Long Sky Castle. Its cellar houses 6 large winches with iron chains, responsible for hauling supplies. "People can be transported too," Robert chuckled. "Then I shall walk," Jason replied, not wishing to be hoisted alongside bread, beer, and other provisions. Such a fate would lack honor. A clattering sound echoed ahead as the drawbridge creaked down, followed by the sliding of well-oiled iron chains, and the gate was subsequently raised. Soldiers emerged with torches to illuminate their path as Jason and his company crossed the moat. In the courtyard, Sir Nestor Royce, the steward of the Vale and guardian of Moongate Castle, awaited them. He was a cousin of Bronze John, born of a cadet branch of House Royce. Robert stepped forward to embrace him, while Eddard introduced Jason. The tournament champion? Sir Jason, you are indeed impressive. Though you appear quite youthful, Nestor remarked, clearly taken aback by the news. He had heard that not only the Kingsguard participated in the tournament at Harrenhal, but also Prince Rhaegar. Now the title of champion belonged to this young Lannister before him. Had he not known Eddard to be a man of truth, he might have suspected a jest from Eddard and Robert. Yes, I am 13 this year. Truly remarkable for one so young. Nestor genuinely praised. Robert interrupted their exchange, urging, is there food? After a day of travel, I feel as though I might perish from hunger. Let us eat. Certainly, we have prepared some bread, succulent roasted chicken, and beer. Nestor had evidently grown accustomed to Robert's manner of speaking as he led the group to the dining hall. After their meal, Jason followed the servant assigned by Nestor to his quarters for rest. He dreamt not at all, yet awoke to the chill of morning, donned his clothing, and stepped outside, where he beheld icicles frozen at the eaves and snowflakes cascading gently from the sky. The preceding 2 months of unseasonably warm weather had lulled everyone into believing that the harsh winters of the past 2 years had receded, heralding the arrival of spring. However, the scholars of the old town had yet to issue any forecasts for seasonal change, and it now appeared their judgment had been sound. This was a false spring. Realizing this, Jason turned back indoors and added 2 more layers to his attire. Such occurrences had transpired before, yet never had they persisted for as long as 2 months as they had this year. The ascent proved far more effortless than Jason had anticipated. Riding mules, they exited through the narrow back door, carefully navigating the stone steps chiseled into the rocky terrain as they climbed. Ed cautioned Flement and Stephen not to hold the mules too tightly, for the creatures disliked it. Though their pace was slow, it was remarkably steady, which eased Jason's anxieties. The mountain path wound and twisted, with deep snow and thick pine needles carpeting the ground like a plush rug, the mules making barely a whisper as they trod upon the stone steps. The stronghold of Cragstone was a formidable stone fortress, its walls bristling with iron spikes, flanked by 2 stout towers encircling the main keep. The gates slowly swung open at the sound of Robert's booming voice, and the grooms transferred their saddles to fresh, spirited mules, while others presented them with roasted meats and onions as hospitality. After a brief respite, they ascended the perilous stone steps ahead, where the snow rendered the path slick, strewn with shards of rock. At that moment, Jason could acutely feel the elevation. The trees grew sparse, and the wind intensified, whipping snowflakes against him. Despite his additional layers, he still felt the cold. Subsequently, they passed Snowmount Keep, which housed only a reinforced tower, a wooden main fort, and a stable nestled behind low stone walls. It was situated close to the Giantess Spear, a vantage point commanding all the steps leading to Cragstone. Jason found it hard to fathom how any current army could conquer this place and reach Eagle's Nest. Over 200 years ago, had the Targaryens not possessed dragons, they would have found it impossible to subdue the Vale of Arryn with ease. After consuming some bread and cheese, they mounted new mules and set forth once more. The steps beyond Snowmount Keep were originally a white expanse, yet now, under the relentless snowstorm, the ground had become even more densely blanketed. However, centuries of freezing, melting, and countless mule hooves had severely damaged the steps. Additionally, the fierce winds here roared like living entities, only to retreat into silence at intervals. Ultimately, they arrived at a perilous stretch of path, measuring approximately 20 feet in length and 3 feet in width, flanked on either side by sheer abysses. I possess the body of a wolverine. Surely I shall not perish from a fall, Jason gulped. Robert and Ed proposed leading the mules across the treacherous passage, prompting Jason to dismount and cautiously follow behind them, holding the mules' reins as they proceeded. As Jason took his first step, he was suddenly beset by a profound fear of heights, a sensation entirely foreign to him until that moment. His 2 attendants fared even worse, their faces drained of color, their bodies trembling uncontrollably. Thankfully, they all managed to traverse the treacherous path without incident. The final fortress, Long Sky Keep, resembled a crescent moon, its towering walls constructed from rough-hewn stones against the mountainside. The weathered walls of Long Sky Keep were adorned with frost, draped in long icicles that glistened in the cold. Beyond the walls lay a series of slopes, where rocks of varying sizes teetered precariously. This place was undoubtedly one of the most susceptible to landslides in the world. A passage opened up in the rock face before them, leading to stables and barracks within. Robert remarked that the last leg of their journey was within the mountain. Somewhat dim, but sheltered from the biting wind and snow. The mule could go no further. From this point, they would have to climb. The path was not overly challenging, and they estimated they would reach their destination within an hour. Jason looked up and beheld the foundation of Eagle's Nest Keep directly above them. No more than 600 feet away, resembling a diminutive white hive from below. "Sir Jason, may I have your permission to ride in the basket?" Stephen mustered the courage to inquire, his face flushed, though it was uncertain whether from the chill or embarrassment. "Of course, and what about you, Fleming?" Jason had already noticed that they were nearing their limits. It was likely their first time at such an elevation, and he too felt the strain. "I can endure, my lord," he replied with a forced smile, attempting to project an air of triumph. Jason, unconcerned with their discomfort, instructed the knight in charge of Long Sky Keep to allow both attendants to ride in the basket. By the time Jason arrived at Eagle's Nest Keep, darkness had descended. By the standards of nobility in the realm, Eagle's Nest Keep was modest, consisting of 7 white spires clustered together like arrows in a quiver, perched atop the mountain. Ed explained that while there were no stables, blacksmiths, or kennels, the granary was comparable in size to that of Winterfell, and the towers could accommodate 500 individuals. Robert jested, "It seems the wind and snow have dulled the wits of the Northmen. After all, Jason has never been to Winterfell." Ed scratched his head in embarrassment, insisting, "In any case, the granary is quite substantial." They were greeted by a knight with a head of silver hair, a robust figure clad in a sky-blue cloak and the crescent moonhawk armor. He was Ser Vardys Egan, the captain of Jon Arryn's guard. "Duke Robert, Ser Ed. Lord Jon is awaiting you in the study. There are pressing matters to discuss." He turned to Jason. "You must be Ser Jason, I presume. Your attendants have been accommodated. I shall escort you to your prepared quarters." "Thank you. Pressing matters?" Jason felt a stir of curiosity about the nature of these matters. Yet the others showed no inclination to invite him along. Moreover, after a day of climbing, he was weary, at least mentally. Oh, what pressing matters could there be now? Jason should come too. He is not an outsider, Robert dismissed with nonchalance. Vadis reluctantly acquiesced. It was not Lord Jon's directive to prevent Jason from entering the study. In truth, Lord Jon had not even mentioned Jason Lannister, likely preoccupied by the unforeseen incident that had transpired. Naturally, Jason was also eager to hear the vital news. Upon their arrival at the study, Jason beheld Duke John Allen, whose hair was silvered with age, yet whose stature remained tall and imposing, broad-shouldered and dignified. At that moment, the Duke sat behind the desk, holding a letter. Upon their entrance, he greeted them briefly before solemnly stating, "Rob, Ned, you must remain composed. News has arrived from Storm's End." He paused, and Jason felt an ominous sensation creeping over him. Duke Horst continued, "Brandon Squire, Ethan Glover, along with Joffrey Marys and Cale Royce, returned to Storm's End alone 2 days ago, accusing Prince Rhaegar of forcibly abducting Lyanna." Chapter 19. Jaime. The snow had fallen for 8 days, enveloping the entirety of King's Landing in a silvery cloak. Many claimed it was an erroneous spring. Jaime, alongside several Kingsguard knights, entered the throne room from behind King Aerys II, whose throne was adorned with the skull of a dragon. The members of the royal council had already taken their seats, while courtiers and various noble lords filled the hall's sides. The emblems of the realm, unicorns, lambs, wild boars, crossed black war hammers, and golden stripes on a white field, represented the Prime Minister's heraldry, a golden symbol of abundance upon a white background. Yet, Rhaegar was absent. News of his abduction of Lyanna Stark in the town of Dorne had reached King's Landing days prior. Jaime had only learned of it while apprehending criminals at a flea pit, overhearing discussions. Such captures should have been the duty of the city watch, clad in gold. Not his own as a Kingsguard, yet Aerys insisted he undertake this task. Initially, Jaime found it hard to believe that Prince Rhaegar would commit such an act. He had encountered Lyanna at the feast in Harrenhal. Though she did not rival Cersei in beauty, she was undeniably lovely, possessing the Stark family's signature long face, brown hair, and gray eyes. Nevertheless, the notion of Rhaegar kidnapping Lyanna was too shocking to accept. Yet, Maester Pycelle confirmed the dreadful news. Rhaegar's actions were bound to have far-reaching consequences. How would the North, Dorne, and the Stormlands respond? Moreover, Princess Elia Martell was currently in the Red Keep. Did she know of this situation? How would she cope with it? Jaime recalled his brother Jason's close relationship with Elia. Perhaps it was his duty to extend his condolences on Jason's behalf. After all, who could bear the weight of such turmoil in their heart? Standing beside the Iron Throne, as did his fellow Kingsguard, Jaime noticed a new noble among the council members. His family crest depicted a burning torch, yet Jaime could not recall any family motto associated with him. This new noble, named Rosart, had been a member of the Alchemists Guild in King's Landing, and now he held the title of Earl. How utterly absurd. Jaime had heard that since the disturbances in the Vale, the king had begun to exhibit an obsession with wildfire, a trait reminiscent of his forebears. Aerys firmly believed in his ability to tame dragons and endeavored to hatch the dragon eggs he had discovered deep within Dragonstone. However, his attempts ultimately proved futile. Perhaps the eggs were simply too ancient. Some had already turned to fossil. Overwhelmed by frustration, Aerys sought the guidance of the ancient Alchemist Guild, where the wise sages were knowledgeable in the creation of a verdant substance known as wildfire, said to resemble dragon fire. Thus, the pyromancers became frequent guests in the court of the flame-obsessed king. Jaime often observed them, a motley crew of jesters manipulating the flames. Since last year, Aerys had resorted to incinerating traitors, murderers, and conspirators, abandoning methods of execution by beheading or hanging. The king seemed to derive a perverse pleasure from these burnings. Always presided over by Rosart, the head of the Alchemist Guild, he had since been elevated to the rank of count and even joined the council of the realm. The disheveled king slowly ascended to the lofty Iron Throne, taking care as he settled upon it. The Iron Throne was forged by Aegon, the Conqueror, the first monarch of the Seven Kingdoms. Legends tell of how he commanded the great dragon Balerion, the Black Dread, to melt down 1,000 swords cast aside by surrendering foes. A process that took 59 days to complete. Once the Red Keep was constructed, the Iron Throne was placed upon a dais within the throne room. Thus, it was a grotesque amalgamation of spikes, sharp edges, and twisted metal. The backrest was similarly adorned with protrusions, making it an uncomfortable seat, impossible to lean against. Aegon had declared that a king should not sit in comfort, intentionally ordering the throne's design to reflect this principle. Aerys had suffered numerous cuts from the throne, earning him the derisive moniker of the Bloody King, as whispers circulated that even the Iron Throne resisted him. Of course, many had perished by fire for uttering such remarks. Once Aerys was settled, the day's petitions commenced. How many would be burned today? Jaime could not help but ponder. The first petitioner was a commoner. In recent days, they seemed to be the first to plead, regardless of their differing backgrounds. Their requests, however, remained strikingly similar, as 2 years of harsh winters had rendered their lives unbearable, and it appeared that the winter would linger on. They sought food and clothing. Yet the king, disinterested, dismissed them as he had done before, ordering the guards to expel them. The second petitioner was a nobleman from the king's domain, the captain of the city guard, Manly Stark. He rushed in, exclaiming, "Your Majesty, Brandon Stark has come with several of his retainers, demanding to breach the Red Keep, claiming he wishes to confront Prince Rhaegar." Jaime's heart raced at the mention of Brandon. Did the Starks possess no sense of decorum? Had they completely forgotten their manners? King Aerys, too, was now a jumpy creature, utterly intolerant of any semblance of rebellion. Indeed, King Aerys, too, could not abide such insolence. Where are they now? He demanded. They remain outside the Red Keep, currently restrained by my men, Manly promptly replied. Good. Very good. The king declared. I command you to apprehend Brandon and his entourage on charges of conspiracy to murder the prince and cast them into the dungeon. Not executing them outright suggested that King Aerys had not yet succumbed entirely to madness. Pycelle, the king bellowed. Paxel is a learned scholar who has served as the Grand Chancellor in the Royal Council for many years. His bald head is speckled with age spots, while a few sparse strands of white hair hang down on either side of his forehead. The chain of his scholarly office, composed of 24 metal plates, dangles heavily from his neck to his chest, and his long, snow-white beard flows gracefully down to his chest. This chain was forged during the reign of King Mikari. For 23 years, he has dutifully served the Seven Kingdoms in his capacity as Grand Chancellor. Prior to his ascension as the royal advisor, his predecessors met untimely ends within a span of less than 3 years. The octogenarian Cass perished shortly after serving King Aegon V for less than a year, Cass's successor. The 90-year-old Elondo also succumbed to the burdens of his role within a year, and Elondo's successor, Maelon, tragically died of illness on his way to King's Landing for his appointment. Consequently, King Aegon V called upon the council to nominate a younger candidate. Thus, the relatively youthful Paxel, at the age of 42, was elected as the new Grand Chancellor. He has now served 3 kings, Aegon V, Jaehaerys II, and the current Aerys II. He is a commendable elder, for while others concealed the news regarding Rhaegar from me, he was candid about the circumstances. He trembled as he stood. Your Majesty, what are your commands? King Aerys cried out hoarsely. Immediately send forth ravens. demanding that the fathers of all the prisoners come south to address the accusations against their sons. It was as though he wished for those fathers, even from afar, to hear his decree. Paxil dutifully departed, and King Aerys lost interest in the trial of the prisoner captured by Jaime, opting instead to leave. Prime Minister Owen Martell took his place upon the Iron Throne to continue presiding over the petitions and subsequent trial proceedings. However, the minds of the nobles within the throne room were likely preoccupied with speculations on how the king would handle the repercussions of Prince Rhaegar's reckless actions. Jaime thought to himself with relief that he would not have to witness the spectacle of burning the living today, and promptly turned to follow the king deeper into the Red Keep. Chapter 20. Dark Tidings. It is a mistaken spring. The heavy snow has intermittently fallen for nearly a month. Though it has ceased now, the warmth of spring remains elusive. Cersei despises this wretched weather. Who could possibly enjoy ice and snow? Except for the Starks, that is. They are poor, foolish, and lowly. It is astonishing that Rhaegar would take a liking to such a harlot, let alone abduct her. Yet perhaps it is merely the harlot who tempted him. Oh, how lowly the Starks truly are. Jason, too, is incomprehensible. He has accompanied Robert Baratheon to some Eyrie and has yet to return. The realm is in turmoil, and Jaime is not by my side. Of my 3 brothers, 2 are far away, leaving only that little wretch, the only one here with me. For some inexplicable reason, Cersei suddenly feels a sense of unease as memories of prophecies resurface. Several years ago, upon hearing of the sorceress's powers, Cersei, along with her friends Jaime Finn and Melara Heatherspoon, sought her out. At that time, she had even harbored some affection for Rhaegar, the suitor she was to be wed to. When Jaime first beheld the witch's pale yellow eyes, terror seized her, prompting her to flee. The witch initially refused to foretell the futures of the remaining 2 girls, but under Cersei's coercion, she reluctantly acquiesced. She answered Cersei's 3 inquiries and uttered a related prophecy. One day, when you are engulfed in tears, they shall constrict your pallid neck and snatch away your life. During her time in King's Landing, she finally grasped the meaning of brother in High Valyrian. Among the 3 brothers, who but the wretched Tyrion, the one responsible for their mother's death, would harm her? No, she chided herself. She ought not to fear him. He is merely 6 years old and incapable of inflicting harm. Moreover, there is no reason for her to tremble before the ramblings of a witch. The other prophecies she spoke had also failed to materialize. She had claimed she would wed the king, yet Rhaegar had long since married Elia Martell and had now abducted Stark. Yes, her prophecies are false and unworthy of trust. I am a Lannister. Such nonsense should not sway me. Father would never believe it. As Cersei consoled herself, she made her way to her father's study. Just as she was about to knock, Ser Kevin emerged alongside another nobleman. He is waiting for you inside. Do hurry. Kevin stated before departing with the nobleman adorned with a white badger sigil, the Earl of Linslaton, from the Deepwood Motte. Days prior, their father had summoned all the vassals, boars, unicorns, silver ships, suns, shells, burning trees, white badgers, gold coins, red bulls, hounds, and more. All the earls and knights had arrived. Were it not for the fact that they often came alone, lacking their armies, Cersei might have thought war was imminent. During this period, she encountered many individuals she had only heard of or seen from afar. Among them, the most striking was Ser Gregor Clegane, the Mountain. He was exceedingly tall and robust, with broad shoulders and arms as thick as tree trunks. His strength likely surpassed that of the renowned Jason, known for his might. Upon entering the study, Cersei found her father writing at his desk. A chair faced him, accompanied by parchment and quills. Her father had never permitted nobles to sit before him during summons. This chair is meant for me, she mused. No sooner had she seated herself than Tywin glanced up at her. His eyes were a pale green, less vivid than those of Jaime or her own, yet upon closer inspection, one could discern flecks of gold within the soft green. Among the 4 children, only her brother Jason and their father possessed such eyes, and his gaze always exuded calmness. He was bald, since his hair began to thin. Tywin had shaved it all off, leaving only a thick golden beard at his temples. He was a proud lion, unwilling to endure the indignity of losing his hair gradually. Although Tywin was tall and broad-shouldered, time had etched its marks upon his face. Now, I am the only one who can assist my father. I am his only reliable child. If only I were a son. Alas, I lack that particular attribute. You must write a letter to Jason at once, informing him that my condition has deteriorated, urging his immediate return to Casterly Rock. Deteriorated condition? But he is aware that I am not truly ill, and such a ruse will not deceive him. Cersei was discontented, unable to bear her father's perpetual focus on his 2 sons while neglecting her, his only daughter. It is I who resemble him most closely. I am the one who can assist him. This letter is not meant for his eyes, since he publicly mentioned my illness. I shall play along." Tywin continued to pen his own correspondence while urging her, "Hurry up." Cersei complied reluctantly. "This letter is not intended for Jason." But what does that mean? Tywin had completed his own letter, and once the ink had thoroughly dried, he organized the document, pouring heated wax from his right hand over it, sealing it with the lion's sigil, and setting it aside. Once Cersei finished her writing, she handed the letter to him. Rising to leave. "Sit down," he said calmly, scrutinizing her written words. Cersei, hesitant to defy him, obediently resumed her seat. At that moment, a knock echoed through the room. "Enter," her father commanded. It was Ser Cleos Fry, bearing a letter. "My lord, news from King's Landing." "Is it from Jaime?" Cersei inquired. But then she noticed the lack of a seal on the letter's wax. "Who sent this letter?" "It is not from Ser Jaime, my lady," he replied politely, then fell silent. Her father possesses other informants in King's Landing yet refuses to share with her. Do Jaime or Jason know of this matter? Tywin swiftly read the letter, rising to gather two more from the table as he prepared to leave with Ser Cleos. "What has transpired?" Cersei summoned her courage to ask. But her father turned to glare at her. He would not divulge the information. He would assure her that there was no cause for concern, she thought. "You are to go to the hall and find your Uncle Kevin. Inform him that I command all the nobles remaining in Casterly Rock to assemble in the hall within 2 hours." The Black Raven carried grim tidings. Over the past month, news had arrived from Riverrun that Brandon had gone to King's Landing in search of Lyanna. 12 days later, another message from King's Landing revealed that the Mad King Aerys had captured Brandon Stark and his retinue, including Eddard Stark, Joffrey Mallister, Kellen Royce, and Albert Arryn, the nephew and heir of Lord Jon Arryn, demanding that the fathers of all accused criminals journey to King's Landing to respond to the shameless allegations. Fortunately, Jon Arryn, persuaded by Robert and Jason, did not go and immediately dispatched a raven to Winterfell to alert Lord Rhaegar. However, 10 days later, news from Winterfell indicated that Lord Rhaegar had already set sail towards White Harbor along the White Knife River 18 days prior, and he was likely nearing the Blackwater Bay by now. 5 days had passed since the receipt of the letter from Winterfell. Once more, news arrived from King's Landing. The Mad King demanded the heads of Robert Baratheon and Eddard Stark. Heads, not men. It appears that Duke Rickard and Brandon have met their untimely demise. Dark omens, akin to black ravens, carry foreboding news. This notion has circulated among the Seven Kingdoms. And over the past month, Jason has truly grasped its weight. Ned, I fear, has endured even more. However, Jason has yet to witness his tears, at least, not in his presence. This silent Stark scion has lost his sister, brother, and father within a month, now assuming the mantle of the head wolf of Winterfell. The mere thought of such anguish is almost unbearable for Jason. If I were to lose my family in this lifetime, could I possess the same fortitude as he? Jason, we will not compel you. After all, you are a Lannister. The roots of this conflict bear no relation to you or your kin. Should you wish to return now, we shall not hinder you. Robert exclaimed with fervor. Duke Arryn intended to summon his vassals to rally the banner of rebellion against the tyrant's atrocities. You need not speak thus, Robert, Jason interjected. You, I, Brandon, Ned, we are all dear friends. Furthermore, I have long held disdain for that mad king and his dishonorable son. You are well aware that Princess Elia Martell treats me as her own brother. Let us fight for her, for Lyanna, for Brandon, and for Duke Rickard's honor. The crows soared from the white towers of the Eyrie, their dark wings fluttering with the fate of the Seven Kingdoms. Chapter 21. The situation. Lord Jon Arryn summoned his vassals to raise the banner of rebellion. However, not all the lords of the Vale were in support of him. Days passed, and only the Weald family of Ironwood and the Redwine family of the Arbor responded to the call, arriving at Moonlight Keep with their forces. Earl Ian Hunter of Longbow Hall sent a warning letter mentioning that Sir Malco of Old Anchor was inviting him to join the Royalist faction in support of the Targaryen dynasty. The Royalist faction included not only Sir Malco, but also the Grafson family of Gulltown and the Whiteley family of Candlekeep, both of whom had publicly declared their unwillingness to follow Jon Arryn into rebellion. Consequently, Earl Jon Royce of Runestone marched his troops to Gulltown to confront Earl Marco Grafson. Gulltown serves as the principal port of the Vale and is one of the 5 major cities of Westeros, rivaling White Harbor in size, while surpassing Lannisport, Old Town, and King's Landing. It is situated to the southeast of the Eyrie, perched on the shores of Crab Bay, boasting a harbor naturally sheltered from the elements. As for the northern locales of Snakewood, Hard's Home, Song's End, Coldwater, the Fingers, and the Sisters, they all profess to be mustering their forces. Though this will require some time, we require a victory, and swiftly. Otherwise, these families may continue to gather their armies indefinitely, Lord Arryn stated, laying down the letter. Currently, they were deliberating matters at Moonlight Keep, with the armies of 3 families encamped outside the castle. The Arryn family's hold over the Vale is indeed a complicated affair. Jason never anticipated encountering such troubles so early in the rebellion, right in the heart of the insurgents' homeland. They would set out early tomorrow, and upon joining forces with Earl Yon, they would commence their siege. In these times, swiftness equates to survival. Solely relying on the Vale's army would render any confrontation with the Targaryens utterly futile. Robb urgently needed to return to Winterfell via Seagull Town to summon the vassals, while Eddard similarly required swift passage to the north. I shall head north tomorrow, first to the Fingers Peninsula, and from there take a ship back to the north, Eddard declared. I cannot afford to wait for you to vanquish the traitors before taking action. It must be thus, Jon responded, turning to give further orders. Vardes, escort Ned. Sir Vardes Egan, the captain of the guard, accepted the command and exited to arrange for personnel. Let us conclude for today, everyone. Rest well and prepare for an early departure tomorrow, Jon announced, signaling the end of the meeting. Robb, remain. Once Jason, Eddard, Sir Nestor Royce, Lady Anya Waywood, and Houghton Redwine had departed, Jon handed Robb a letter. The Duke of Tywin's condition has deteriorated. Robb was taken aback, surprised that Jon Arryn had privately inspected a letter belonging to Jason. When did this arrive? Today? What do you think? Is it genuine? Did Jason ever mention Tywin's illness to you? Jon inquired. Robb mused. I should not fault him. The old man rose against the Targaryens for Ned and me. And intercepting Jason's letter was likely a means to gather more intelligence. Not that I recall. Ah, yes, before the tournament at Harrenhal. Jason did allude to the Mad King's father being ill. But that may have merely been a pretext, Jon remarked. If this is false, what could Tywin's aim be? To demonstrate Jason's significance to us? Yet, even without this, we would not harm Jason. Robb scrutinized the letter once more. This is a missive from Cersei to Jason, urging him to return to Casterly Rock immediately. If true, it seems Tywin wishes Jason to inherit Casterly Rock. This would imply he has forsaken his brother Jaime. Perhaps a similar letter has already reached King's Landing. Jon disagreed, stating, regardless, we cannot afford to let him return so easily at this juncture. Even if he might inherit Casterly Rock, I shall seek an opportunity to question Jason tomorrow, but this letter cannot be presented to him, Robb asked. Has there been any response from House Tully? Not yet. We must successfully exit the Vale before they consider it, Jon replied. Very well, let it be. You should also take your rest. After Robb departed, Jon sat alone, contemplating. I could attempt to discreetly spread the word that Jason has joined the insurgents, compelling Tywin to mobilize his forces in support of me. However, Robb has already pledged to Jason to allow him to secretly join the rebellion, to safeguard his brother Jaime's safety. Jon perceived that intercepting this letter had already placed Robb in an awkward position. Furthermore, given the events in Moonlight Town 4 years prior, it seemed unlikely that Tywin would be a man to yield to threats. At dawn, after breakfast, Jason donned new armor with the assistance of Fleming, Rosso, and Stephen. To avoid recognition by the enemy, he refrained from wearing the gold-embellished armor with the scarlet cloak, instead selecting a fitted plate armor from the armory of the Eyrie. Embroidered with a falcon, the armor was complemented by a sky-blue cloak, while the helmet, a colossal piece adorned with a crescent moon, rested upon another steed. Jason rode Heart of the Lion, a long sword selected from the armory hanging at his waist, while his own gilded two-handed sword was entrusted to Fleming for safekeeping. Robert had once suggested that Jason wield a warhammer, but having scarcely practiced with one and favoring the elegance of a two-handed sword, he ultimately chose not to change his weaponry. The combined forces of the 3 families numbered around 4,000 to 5,000, making their way towards Seagull Town. The heavy snows had persisted intermittently for a month, draping the world in silver, and now, as the ice and snow began to melt, the weather grew increasingly frigid. Nevertheless, the army's pace did not waver. After a day of rapid marching, they arrived at Red Fort to rest. The scent of the army was far from pleasant. Seizing the opportunity to set up camp, Jason rode alone toward the hills to the east. An overly keen sense of smell was hardly a blessing. Once battle commenced, the distress would surely intensify. A mountain of corpses and a sea of blood would likely greet him in 2 days' time. Jason suddenly realized that until now, he had never personally taken a life using the swordsmanship or marksmanship he had learned. How many of the 4,000 behind him would survive? Every word and action ought to benefit the family. They were not my kin. This was the only way he could rationalize his thoughts. He could not save them all. At that moment, a disturbance arose ahead. Had someone approached? Jason strained his gaze through the layers of treetops, faintly discerning a figure. Jason, what brings you here so suddenly? Robert rode closer. I need to discuss something with you. Robert, there's trouble ahead. The adversaries had already spotted them and were retreating. Jason drew his sword and spurred his horse forward. He could only save his own kin. They were enemies. They were enemies. There were two of them, just mounting their horses. And before they could fully prepare, Jason charged ahead. The two quickly turned their mounts and drew their swords to confront him. With a swift horizontal slash, Jason disarmed one, sending his sword flying, while the other attempted to stab him, only to be deflected by Jason's blade. Seizing the opportunity, Jason unleashed a powerful punch with his left hand, sending the man tumbling from his horse. Robert then arrived, knocking the weaponless soldier down as well. Jason glanced at his longsword, now marred with a notch from that last clash. Perhaps he should have followed Robert's lead and opted for a hammer instead. Chapter 22. The Siege. What is your name? Jon inquired. Larys Stone. Larys, trembling and clutching his chest, knelt upon the ground. Stone. Seems like a bastard. Jason regarded the young man being interrogated. He was rather unattractive, with a mop of rust-colored hair, eyes evasive, and beads of cold sweat trickling down his brow, whether from anxiety or physical agony. It was unclear. Why were you wandering about armed and mounted? Whom do you serve? Jon pressed, his tone calm, devoid of the fervor typical of an interrogation. I serve Sir Wickley, my lord. He added, Mohole and I have been dispatched to investigate. Indeed. It seems to be a scout from Candlehole City, and he appears to possess a knack for counting. After all, Seagull Town is constrained by Count Yoren, and it is unlikely they can muster troops to this location. How many soldiers does Candlehole City possess? Are there reinforcements? Robert inquired. When I departed, I did not observe any reinforcements. Candlehole City likely has a force of about 1,000 men, the man replied. That is a falsehood. How could that scoundrel Edmund Wycliffe organize such a number? Another interjected. It is quite possible that William Mouton has already arrived at Candlehole City with his troops. Sir Houghton, drawing his longsword in impatience, strode forward, stating, I believe we should eliminate this bastard immediately and then interrogate the next. William Mouton of Seagull Town is the Lord of the Riverlands. Although the Tully family is betrothed to House Stark, with Brandon deceased, the Tullys may not immediately align with our cause. Moreover, Seagull Town is closer to King's Landing than River Run. Jon did not impede Houghton, while Larys, nearly in tears, hastily affirmed, I swear on the stranger, everything I said is true. A few days ago, Sir Wycliffe ordered the interception of vessels passing through Crab Bay to replenish the troops. I was involved in capturing some merchants. I absolutely did not lie. The stranger, among the 7 gods, is akin to the god of death, and few would dare to swear an oath upon him. For the moment, the assembly accepted his words. And Jon commanded the guards to escort this bastard away and to bring forth another scout, named Mohole. What is your name? Jon inquired. We must retain a contingent of troops here if there truly lies an army of 1,000 across from us. Jon pointed to the map. Furthermore, we have received no intelligence regarding Saltmarsh or Seagull Town. They likely commenced their maneuvers upon receiving news of Brandon's death, provided they are not foolish. Everyone concurred, awaiting his orders. At this juncture, Jason felt like an outsider. It had already been surprising that Jon had invited him to the council. Regardless of how well Robert, Eddard, and himself were acquainted, in the current scenario, his position resembled that of a hostage. Were it not for his father Tywin's formidable reputation, he might have been compelled to write letters threatening the Westerlands with military action. Yet, Jon continued to treat him as he had over the past month. Sir Houghton, Sir Nestor, you shall remain at the Red Keep to closely monitor Candlehole City's movements, but refrain from initiating any assaults. I leave you with 1,500 men. Houghton and Nestor raised no objections and pledged their compliance. Jon continued, we shall proceed to Seagull Town. We must resolve this swiftly. Time is not on our side. After the meeting adjourned, Jason returned to his tent to prepare for rest, but Robert unexpectedly came to visit. Robert hesitated, seemingly gathering his thoughts. Jason, I have something important to discuss with you. Very well, Lady Robert. When did you become so reticent? Jason chuckled. Damn you. Jason, I am speaking of serious matters. Robert retorted with a laugh, quickly adopting a grave expression. It concerns your father. After we departed, Maester Corman received a missive from Casterly Rock. Robert fidgeted as he retrieved the letter and handed it over. At this moment, Jason discerned the reason behind his demeanor. The letter had already been opened. Although he understood the inevitability of this breach, he felt a surge of indignation. He seized the letter and, illuminated by the flickering candlelight, discovered it was penned by Cersei. It spoke of a deteriorating condition rather than an illness. Was his father intending to maintain this charade? What was the purpose of this correspondence? Jon was surely not going to let him depart at present, regardless of Robert's assurances. Robert observed Jason's silence, his face stern as he scrutinized the letter. He hastily explained, "I deeply apologize, Jason. The current circumstances compel us to take such measures." "Robert, do you trust me?" Jason inquired, turning the question back upon him. "Of course." Robert responded immediately. "Then that suffices. I am aware of your predicament. Regrettably, I cannot sway my father's decisions, and I must rely on my sword to assist you." "That is adequate." Jason's expression made it evident that the contents of the letter were fabricated. Yet Robert could also perceive the resolve in his demeanor, and that was enough. The walls of Seagull Town were modest, standing nearly 6 feet tall, but there was a stone fortress on the elevated ground within the town. However, when Jason arrived with the troops, Euron Royce had yet to breach even the outermost wall. Clearly, he would not sacrifice his soldiers' lives without a strategic advantage before Jon's forces arrived. With no tactical finesse, Euron had already prepared the ladders and battering rams for the siege. After a brief respite, the troops commenced their assault. The odds were heavily stacked against the defenders, with over 4,000 attackers against fewer than 2,000 defenders, most of whom were merely temporary hires, mercenaries, and townsfolk. In Robert's words, they were nothing more than a rabble. Jason donned his armor, ready to scale the wall. The low barrier, barely 6 feet high, was surmountable even with half-plate armor. "Jason, you shall not enter the fray," Jon commanded. "This is a battle for the Vale, and you are our guest." Jason swapped horses, slinging his gilded two-handed sword over his back while clutching the one-handed war hammer offered by Fleming, which he secured at his waist. "I am clad in the new moon falcon armor, and besides, Robert leads the way, as his brother. I have no reason to remain behind." Jason then took the oak shield that Fleming extended to him. "My Lord Jon, I cannot make decisions for the entire Lannister family, but I am a free man. This is my war." With that, Jason urged his steed forward, scrutinizing the enemy's defenses atop the walls. "Fleming, you and Rosso, along with Stephen, remain here," Jason said as he donned his helmet. "No, my lord, allow me to fight alongside you," Fleming implored, striving to maintain a resolute facade, concealing his trepidation. "You cannot keep pace." Without another word, Jason spurred his horse into a gallop, racing ahead toward the frontline siege troops. "Archers, draw hold. Release." The archers on both sides engaged, and Jason closed in on the rear of the attacking forces, where the infantry raised their shields to protect the soldiers maneuvering the short ladders and siege carts. Only a few scattered arrows struck their target, eliciting a few cries of anguish. Jason, undeterred, accelerated, discarding his shield adorned with arrows, and rode past the ranks, approaching the city walls. Before the enemy could fire again, Jason steadied himself against the saddle, leapt up into a crouch, and with a powerful push, vaulted over the wall, his azure cloak unfurling like a falcon behind him. Chapter 23, Blood Eagle. Jason tackled an archer, delivering a punch that connected squarely with the opponent's head. Without hesitation, he rolled down the other side of the wall and dashed into the alleyways. He could not afford to serve as a target, though he might survive. The pain would still be considerable. "Damn it, what are you doing? Seize that thing. Archers, focus ahead," an officer shouted in exasperation. Footfalls approached from behind as a knight and several soldiers rushed forth. Once he confirmed that the archers atop the wall could no longer threaten him, Jason drew his war hammer and turned to face his foes. The foremost knight, noticing Jason's halt, immediately advanced with a sweeping strike. Jason, leveraging his strength, deflected the blow with a powerful swing of his hammer. Another soldier quickly lunged with a sword, forcing Jason to retreat a step and parry the blade with his war hammer. At that moment, other soldiers arrived, and the leading knight, his wrist numbed from the impact, retreated, allowing a soldier armed with a spear to take the front. The alley was narrow, barely accommodating 3 men side by side. Jason wasted no time, charging forward unexpectedly. Dodging a thrust from a spear, grasping one spear with his left hand, he struck the opponent's leather cap with his hammer, then swiftly reversed the motion to smash another adversary in the face. Their heads burst open like overripe melons, collapsing to the ground in convulsions. Clearly startled by Jason's sudden burst of speed, the enemy had no chance to react. Seizing the opportunity, Jason hurled his war hammer, felling one foe, then stepped forward with his right hand grasping the spear in his left, drawing it in a circular motion to strike down on the opposing spear, and thrusting forward to slay another enemy. In mere moments, for spear-wielding soldiers lay dead, and Jason, now armed with a spear, dominated the confined space. What a remarkable display from Jason, they mused. Alas for that poor horse, now a target. Stop firing arrows. In this short distance, charge with me, Robert bellowed, leading the charge, intent on being the first to top the walls, only to find Jason had stolen his thunder. No matter how skilled in combat, It was impossible to remain unscathed amidst such overwhelming foes. They must press the attack swiftly. A soldier, clutching an exceptionally sturdy short ladder, hurriedly dashed from behind the cart, positioning it against the low wall. Robert, wielding an oversized war hammer, ascended the ladder, swinging it with tremendous force, reducing his opponent to a bloody pulp, bone splinters scattering. "For Eagle's Nest! For Aelin!" he shouted, as the bone claw pierced through a skull and slowly retracted. The scent of war is indeed dreadful. Jason gritted his teeth and forcefully withdrew the bullet lodged in his calf. A familiar warmth and tingling sensation enveloped him, and the wound visibly healed before his eyes. Surveying his surroundings, he noted that, besides the initial 6 foes, a contingent of reinforcements approached from behind, with a total of 14 corpses strewn across the ground. Jason observed that the knight he had impaled with his spear had not yet succumbed to his injuries. He clutched his abdomen, his face ashen, gazing at Jason in terror while muttering incoherently. As Jason drew closer, he barely caught the words, 7 layers of hell. The knight uttered. Jason, with a swift stroke of his sword, mercifully ended the knight's suffering. He had anticipated feeling out of place on the battlefield for the first time, yet even now, Jason found himself unable to suppress the primal urge to seize the lives of others. "For Eagle's Nest! For Aelin!" A roar echoed from nearby. "For Lannister!" Jason dismissed further thoughts and charged towards the castle by the harbor with his sword drawn. The ensuing conflict was less a battle and more a massacre. The low walls proved no barrier against the onslaught of Aelin's forces. The defenders of Seagull Town were hastily assembled and utterly ineffectual. Chaos reigned within the town, with soldiers fleeing from the battlements, some racing towards the castle, others towards the harbor, and some seizing the opportunity to invade the homes of civilians. A heart-wrenching scream pierced the air, marking the 4th time Jason had encountered such horror on his path to the castle, each instance halting him momentarily. "In the name of the maiden, I implore you to safeguard all women." Jason recalled the moment Arthur had placed Dawn upon his left shoulder. This time, he found himself in a tavern, its doors shattered, anguished cries emanating from the upper floors, while 2 soldiers rummaged about on the ground floor. They froze at the sight of Jason, bloodied and grim. "You're welcome to join, but you must pay and stay behind us. Even a knight must abide by the rules." One of them slowly brandished his weapon, warning, "You wouldn't dare enter the fray looking so filthy, would you? Your sword is quite impressive. Be cautious, Moro. This is a damn falcon. Could he have breached the city so swiftly?" The other soldier swiftly drew his sword, and only then did Moro notice the tattered azure cloak trailing behind the dust and bloodstained knight. Jason lunged forward, severing Moro's head with a single stroke, then pursued the other soldier, parrying his strike before sending him flying with a kick. "Hurry upstairs." At the staircase's edge, an elderly man lay dead, a sword embedded in his abdomen. Jason burst into a room where 3 men and 2 women were gathered. "You bastards, you'll have to wait," he exclaimed before dispatching one of the men, while the other 2 barely had time to react before being cleaved in 2. The 2 women shrieked, huddling together, burying their heads and trembling uncontrollably. Jason had no time to offer solace. Indeed, it was perhaps better for them to remain hidden, to demonstrate that he was not a beast of prey. Upon reaching the fish market and beholding the castle adorned with a tower, Jason dispatched several more criminals, rapists, arsonists, and thieves, until Robert arrived beneath the castle before him. The banner hanging from the tower bore the emblem of House Grafson, upon a backdrop of fiery crimson. A black triangle crowned with a yellow burning tower stood prominently. Robert, vociferously urging the surrender of Grafson within the castle, simultaneously directed the assembly of siege machinery, which essentially amounted to seeking a sturdy wooden post. Jason sought a momentary respite, deliberately distancing himself from the surrounding soldiers, who instinctively avoided his presence. Soon, an increasing number of soldiers congregated, culminating in the announcement of surrender by Lady Grafson. Jason was relieved from the necessity of attempting another daring leap into the fortress. Seagull Town had been decisively claimed, yet chaos still reigned. "Robert, I need additional manpower," Jason interjected as Robert was poised to enter the castle. "Jason, you appear to have endured a fierce battle. What need have you for more men?" "You ought to rest for a spell. Let them handle the aftermath," Robert replied, observing Jason's silent gaze. "Very well," Robert conceded, turning to issue commands. "Hasten, take 10 men and arm them with crossbows. Follow Jason's lead." Hasten acknowledged the order and set off to gather troops. "And what of Count Marco Grafson?" Jason inquired. "Deceased. I took his life," Robert declared with pride, a hearty laugh escaping him. "Alas, you missed the spectacle. He charged at me, and with one swing, I sent him flying back." "Robert, now that the castle has fallen, It would be prudent to check the port and ensure the ships remain intact. Jason chose to overlook Robert's braggadocio. Fear not, Lord Nestor has already departed. We shall split our forces. With that, Jason had nothing further to add. Once Hasten arrived with the men, Jason led them through the winding streets of Seagull Town, intent on dealing with the nefarious creatures who thrived amidst the turmoil, much like a blood eagle hunting its prey. Chapter 24. The judgment. A week had elapsed since the battle's conclusion, yet the tasks at hand remained abundant. Foremost was the governance of Seagull Town, addressing post-war issues, particularly the matter of the deceased and the urgent need to manage corpses to prevent the outbreak of disease. Additionally, there was the necessity to await further supplies and reinforcements. The rapid victory had far-reaching implications. At the very least, the march of other noble armies had accelerated. Many nobles, accompanied by portions of their troops, began arriving at Seagull Town via waterways, while cavalry units began to converge towards Bloodgate. Sir Malco, from Old Anchor, had abruptly defected from the royal faction, aligning himself with the Valley Coalition. Meanwhile, the Weckley family of Candlehole Castle had not made any definitive statements. Candlehole Castle, situated along the shores of Crab Bay, was a critical location that needed to be secured to prevent future disruptions in supply lines. Consequently, on the day following the battle, Jon Arryn commanded Yoren Royce to lead troops aboard the numerous vessels left at Seagull Town's port to control Crab Bay and thwart any reinforcements reaching Candlehole Castle. At the same time, messages were dispatched to Red Keep, instructing Houghton and Nestor to advance overland towards Candlehole Castle. On the same day, Robert embarked on a vessel bound for Stormland, a perilous endeavor. Although the precise movements of the Targaryen family remained uncertain, if they possessed any intelligence, they would likely know to station individuals in proximity to Seagull Town, Dragonstone, and Storm's End to intercept passing ships. After all, Dragonstone boasted a well-equipped fleet, unlike the makeshift assembly of the Valley Coalition. However, Robert must return to summon his vassals, for with additional strength comes a greater hope for victory. Yet, these matters do not fall under Jason's purview. In fact, since the battle concluded, he has found himself with little to occupy his time. He had initially wished to accompany Robert on the ship to Windswept Keep, but both Robert and Jon rejected this proposal. Recently, Jon assigned him a task, urging him to return to his former vocation of apprehending criminals. It appears that on the day of battle, Jason's efforts in capturing and executing wrongdoers left a profound impression on Jon. The nature of the criminals apprehended then depended on their allegiance. Enemy combatants were executed on the spot, while compatriots were taken prisoner, thus offending many. Of course, this time, Jon stipulated that there should be no private executions. All must be captured alive. Given Jason's alarming actions during the battle, the criminals he now pursues are merely petty thieves, with cases involving military personnel being exceedingly rare. Once captured, they are, of course, subject to trial. The trials in Seagull Town are held in the fish market, typically presided over by Duke Jon himself. A high platform has been erected by the water's edge, where Jon Arryn sits, surveying the accused. To his left stands a long gallows, its ropes capable of hanging 20 men. At this moment, 5 corpses dangle from its structure, 2 of which are relatively fresh, having been captured by Jason himself, while the other 3 show evident signs of decay. A bold raven is seen plucking morsels of flesh from one of the decomposing bodies, while the other ravens scatter at the sight of the gathered townsfolk, who eagerly anticipate witnessing a hanging. The ravens, it seems, share the sentiment, hoping that the trial will provide them with more sustenance. Beside Duke Jon sit several newly arrived nobles. Jason stands behind them, adorned with a helmet, clad in chainmail and leather armor, topped with a gray steel breastplate. A massive sword with a golden hilt juts from his left shoulder, and a sky-blue falcon cloak is clasped at his shoulder. A young man, draped in a coarse cloak and wearing a filthy shirt, stands trial, declaring, "I have harmed no one, my lord. I merely took what the monks left behind as they fled." He adds, "If you wish to sever my finger for this, then do so." According to tradition, thieves have a finger amputated, to which Duke Jon sternly replies, "To steal from the sanctum is to steal from the gods. A crime upon a crime." He turns to Jason, 7 fingers, ensure that 2 thumbs remain. Jason has grown accustomed to Duke Jon's unusual severity during trials and promptly instructs the guards to carry out the sentence. In truth, had the man not been so emaciated, Jon might have considered sending him to the military instead, thus sparing him the loss of fingers. Between death and amputation, Jon chooses the latter, which, in some sense, could be viewed as an act of mercy. 7. The thief's face pales. The guards seize him, and he weakly resists, as if already crippled. Next is a baker, accused of mixing sawdust into his flour. Duke Jon imposes a fine of 30 silver deer coins. The baker swears to the heavens that he possesses not such wealth, prompting the Duke to declare that he shall serve in the military as penance. Behind him stood a gaunt, pallid prostitute, accused of infecting 4 soldiers of House Arryn with foul sores. Jon sighed, instructing that she first cleanse herself with lye before being imprisoned in the dungeon. The weeping woman was dragged away. Next came a sailor from a 2-masted ship, accused by a newly arrived archer in the service of Ser Malco, whose bandaged hand bore a crest, a rusty anchor against a turquoise background, flanked above by 3 blue discs on a yellow field. "My lord, this bastard pierced my hand with a dagger," he claimed. "He said I was cheating while playing dice." "Did you cheat?" the Duke inquired. "No, my lord. I absolutely did not." "Theft." One finger, lying to the rack. "Show me the dice." "Dice." The archer's gaze turned to Ser Malco, who merely stared out at the distant fishing boats, remaining silent. The archer swallowed hard. "Perhaps those were my lucky dice, yes." Jon had heard enough. Sever his little finger. He may choose which hand. Drive a nail through the palm of the other. At that moment, a scholar from Seagull Town approached, holding a letter. Jason recognized the sigil of House Tully. Seeing this, Duke Jon rose, pointing at Jason. "I leave the rest to you." He turned to summon his nobles. Departing from the high platform, it seemed House Tully was about to join the alliance. Jason thought, wondering about Ned and Robert's circumstances. Jason, still wearing his helm, sat at the head of the table, gesturing for Fleming, Rosso, and Stephen to ascend from below and stand beside him. "Next, next," the king bellowed, as the nauseating stench of cooked flesh pervaded the throne hall. Merely for the act of theft, the king sentenced the thief to death. Jaime noticed the new prisoner trembling. Fear etched upon his face. How could he not be terrified? The fall of the Seagull Town loyalists had only worsened the king's temper. After all, it was he who had initially refused to lend support when the Vale loyalists sought aid, deeming it a conspiracy. The king, arrogant, suspicious, and foolish, always vented his frustrations with loud outbursts, unable to keep any secrets. Even before Brandon and Ricard perished, the royal council had advised him to recall Rhaegar and dispatch the Dragonstone fleet to Seagull Town to blockade the Crab Bay outlet, while commanding the nobles of the Riverlands to seal the Bloodgate exit to prevent Duke Jon from defying orders. The king dismissed all counsel, waiting for news from the Vale before erupting in rage, executing multiple criminals in a single day to quell his anger. Now, the Vale had seemingly united, at least on the surface, and no routes had been blockaded. Once Eddard Stark marched north and Robert Baratheon descended south, the North and the Stormlands would rise in rebellion as well. My father and the Tullus of the Riverlands had yet to respond. They were unlikely to mobilize troops easily. Meanwhile, the lands of the River Bay and Dorne were gathering forces, but the former claimed they needed time, and the latter, due to the long journey, truly required time. In truth, it was all due to Rhaegar. Jason harbored doubts that the time required by the latter would only extend further. A victory was desperately needed. Yet the initial advantage was seized by the adversary. Prince Rhaegar's whereabouts remained a mystery, while the king lingered in the throne room daily, adjudicating the guilty. Should this continue, it seemed inevitable that the Targaryen family would face its own reckoning. My father would never align himself with the vanquished. How would I choose then? Chapter 25. The meeting against a white backdrop. 3 ravens clutched hearts in flight. Jason stood in his temporary quarters, gazing at the vessels entering the harbor. During idle moments, he would pause to reminisce, much like he did when overlooking Lannisport from Casterly Rock. This was the domain of House Cobury, and it seemed they had captured a Cobury this time, a thought that struck Jason as oddly familiar. Indeed, Lord Robert had apprehended a knight named Ser Lyn Cobury during the siege. Fleming responded, revealing it was to secure the return of his son. It was said that his family possessed an ancestral Valyrian steel sword, known as Lady Forlorn. He resolved to see it for himself. Valyrian steel, infused with magic, was reputedly crafted by artisans who meticulously hammered it to balance and purify the iron, imbuing it with extraordinary qualities through incantations and esoteric techniques. Valyrian steel swords were renowned for their lightweight strength, surpassing the sharpness of any other metal. However, the art of forging Valyrian steel was lost following the cataclysm of Old Valyria, rendering existing swords of this material exceedingly rare and precious. Presently, rumors circulated of a master weaponsmith in Coer who had rediscovered the technique to reforge Valyrian steel, though it was merely a process of remaking, not original creation. Jason recalled from a television series he had once watched that Valyrian steel swords could vanquish White Walkers. The Lannister family sword, Bright Roar, was a Valyrian steel blade, but regrettably, it had vanished during King Tommen II's ill-fated expedition to Valyria. I must find a way to procure a Valyrian steel sword for myself. Which banner belongs to that house? Rosso inquired, pointing at the flag with a gray stone head against a green background, appearing quite formidable. Jason found himself momentarily stumped by the question, as he could not recall any house in the Vale bearing such a sigil. It might belong to a newly ennobled knight, he speculated. Sir Jason, I have found it, Stephen exclaimed breathlessly as he rushed up the stairs, and Fleming handed him a cup of wine. After Jason allowed him a moment to recover, he inquired, so soon? What colors do they have? At a shop not far from here, they had pigments available, but only in brown and green. Then let us procure the brown, Jason decided. Having grown weary of wearing a helmet that drew too much attention to his golden curls, he devised the idea of dyeing his hair. Ultimately, the three attendants, Fleming, Rosso, and Stephen, rolled dice to determine who would run the errand, and unfortunate Stephen drew the short straw. Fortunately, he did not waste time searching all of Seagull Town, as he discovered the dye nearby. Foolishly, he returned empty-handed due to his ignorance of Jason's preferred color, necessitating yet another trip. After dyeing his hair and dining, Jason made his way to the castle adjacent to the harbor to attend a meeting. With the captain of Jon Arryn's guard assigned to escort Ned, Jason now ostensibly stood in for Sir Vardys as the Duke's captain of the guard. However, Jason's role at the meeting was largely that of a silent observer, merely listening. Jon made no further comments about Jason's new hair color, simply stating that it was a good idea. As Jason accompanied Jon into the meeting room, the table was already occupied by the various nobles of the Vale. As soon as Duke Jon took his seat, he delved straight into the matter at hand. The army's supplies had been gathered, and it was time to march. He continued, looking around. That news from Lord Yon indicated that Sir Edmund Wick from Candlekeep had answered the call 3 days prior to join their forces. No sightings of the enemy fleet had been reported in Crab Bay, and Sir Morton Valerion, the Knight of the Bloodgate, had also failed to detect any enemy forces on King S Road outside the Bloodgate. It appeared that the Mad King's movements were slower than anticipated. Lord Cobbery summarized the situation, inquiring about the Riverlands. The Tully family was inclined to cooperate with them, but the stance of the Mouton family in the eastern Riverlands, the Tullis of Harrenhal, and the Bracken family of Stonehenge was less clear. Horst mentioned that they had not responded to the summons. Upon hearing this, a heavy silence fell over the assembly, as most of the nobles present were not quick to accept the summons from their liege lords. Lord Yon had already marched his troops to Quiet Isle and Saltpans along the Crab Bay coast. Undeterred, Duke Jon continued to share his updates, mentioning that the cavalry gathered at the Bloodgate was led by Lord Nestor, who would strike from the Bloodgate to secure both Saltpans and the small town of Lord Harroway. What arrangements shall we make here? Duke Jon was prompted directly by Lord Lindley. The geographical significance of the Mouton family in the town of Moat Cailin cannot be overlooked, since their position remains ambiguous. We must assess it personally. I must also make a trip to Riverrun. I am willing to lead forces to Moat Cailin, should they still support the Mad King. We shall seize it as one of the strongholds of the Alliance in the Riverlands, Lord Cobbery immediately offered. In Jason's eyes, this was merely an opportunistic display of loyalty to Jon, driven by Lord Lynn Cobbery's motivations. Lord Lindley from Snakewood also expressed his willingness to take the lead in capturing Moat Cailin, but questioned the trustworthiness of the Tullis. I believe it prudent to establish a solid foothold in the Riverlands first, and wait for Eddard Stark to march south before proceeding to Riverrun. With both sides converging, we need not fear any schemes. Can the North arrive so swiftly? Ian Hunter disagreed with this perspective, asserting that Duke Horst was a long-standing ally of both himself and Duke Jon, and thus did not warrant such skepticism. Caution is never misplaced. The North has always been united. When the news of Duke Rickard's death reached us, there were already stirrings in White Harbor. Did not Lord Bonnell say that he personally escorted Eddard to White Harbor just days ago? Perhaps the Northern Army has already assembled, awaiting the signal to march forth. Count Lindley insists on waiting for the Northern forces to descend before proceeding to the town of Flowing. And what of the Lannisters? One cannot overlook Tywin. Cobbery interjected. Duke Jon paused and remarked, according to the latest intelligence from Horst, there are currently no discernible movements from the Westerlands. The true contest now lies between us, the Crownlands, and Robert, alongside the Riverlands. Other factions are either unable to intervene or are merely observing. Jon issued his command, assigning Count Cobbery and Count Lindley to lead the main forces to the town of Springwell, while he and Ian Hunt would rendezvous with Yorn, taking a small contingent. After addressing the issues in Saltfield and the town of Harroway, they would then head to Flowing. The entire assembly consisted of discussions among the prominent families, while the lesser nobles, like Jason, merely listened. Nearly 2 weeks have elapsed since the assault on Seagull Town, and the Vale Coalition has commenced a full advance into the Riverlands. Chapter 26. Peter Baelish? Jason was taken aback. Are you referring to the family whose sigil bears the visage of the Titan? The incongruity of Petyr Baelish and the Titan is striking. What was his family's emblem in the series? Jason found himself at a loss. Indeed, I acquired this information from soldiers of House Cobry. Sir Aidan Baelish is a vassal of the Cobry family. This minor noble's domain lies on the smallest peninsula of the Fingers. It is said that Aidan's grandfather hailed from Bravos and later served as a mercenary for House Cobry in the Vale. When his son, Aidan's father, was knighted, he chose the Titan of Bravos as his heraldry. Fleming, puzzled, inquired, why has the knight suddenly taken an interest in such a minor noble? Is it due to the tale recounted by Sir Brandon? Perhaps, that Petyr dared to challenge Brandon intrigues me. I would very much like to meet him. I wonder if Petyr Baelish has accompanied him. I previously heard from Brandon that Petyr had dueled him in Flowing and was subsequently wounded. He is a perilous individual. Perhaps I should consider dealing with him beforehand, alongside that distant schemer, the spider in King's Landing. Perhaps I could maneuver to my advantage in due course. However, Jason was acutely aware of his own limitations in such duplicitous matters. If the opportunity arises, it would be prudent to eliminate him to avoid future complications. Sir Jason, it is time to depart. Fleming's reminder disrupted Jason's contemplations. Indeed, it is time to set forth. Why dwell on such matters? Let us first attend to the tasks at hand. The voyage was remarkably tranquil, devoid of enemy fleets in Crab Bay, rendering the journey somewhat tedious. Fortunately, the distance was not extensive. On the second day of their departure, they encountered patrolling vessels in the bay, most manned by soldiers of House Wycliffe. Such small patrols typically comprised a few soldiers accompanied by 1 or 2 hired merchants. On the third day, ships commanded by Count Cobry and Count Linley, laden with a considerable force, set sail towards the town of Inquan. Duke John continued his journey to Saltfield with the remaining vessels. Jason, serving as John's temporary captain of the guard, naturally accompanied him to Saltfield. On the fourth day, the waters were strewn with corpses and the remnants of ships. The closer they approached Saltfield, the more numerous these sights became, accompanied by many vessels engaged in recovery efforts. At last, you have arrived, my Lord Duke, called out a figure adorned in garments embroidered with 3 candles ablaze with crimson flames against a backdrop of black and gray, hailing from the Wycliffe family of Candle Hollow. Sir Edmund, what is the state of the battle? Where is Count Yorn? John inquired as he walked ahead. When we first arrived at Saltfield, a contingent of soldiers from the Riverine, Lute, and Mutton families had just gathered here. Sir Wycliffe promptly interjected, eager to claim merit. However, they were not welcoming. After fruitless negotiations, Count Yorn and I launched an assault and captured the place. Subsequently, Count Yorn took his forces to pursue the enemy, leaving me here to manage the aftermath and await your arrival, my Lord Duke. His demeanor was excessively humble, but given his initial ambiguous stance while amassing troops, it was perhaps understandable. The Mutton family? It seems the conflict in Inquan is unavoidable. But why have they come here? John pondered aloud. The soldiers of the Mutton family are not numerous. They are likely merely following orders. They are led by Miss Mutton, not by William Mutton. At present, Count Yorn is outside the town of Count Harroway, facing the large army led by Count Walter. It is only natural for the Riverine family to support the Targaryens. As Sir Oswell Riverine, the brother of Walter, is one of the King's Guard, I was knighted under their watchful eyes, resided in their stronghold of Harrenburg, and emerged victorious in the tournaments they hosted. Now, I must clash with them on the battlefield. Fate is indeed peculiar. Are there any ravens here? John inquired. Yes, but the maester stated that they only reached the regions of Riverrun. This is also the reason why news has not reached Seagull Town in a timely manner. That will suffice. Jason, go and oversee the unloading of supplies. Inform the soldiers that we shall set forth to Count Harroway's town tomorrow, John commanded. I must pen a letter. As you wish, my lord, Jason replied, departing towards the mooring place of the other vessels at the port. It seemed that Sir Edmund only then noticed Jason, regarding him with curious eyes. Jason felt confident in his disguise, for not all had encountered him before. Judging solely by his facial features, one might not recognize him as Jason Lannister, especially given the stark difference in hair color. The war-torn harbor had yet to be thoroughly cleansed, the metallic scent of blood palpable in the air. Jason, accompanied by his 3 attendants, commenced supervising and explaining the tasks at hand. The so-called supplies were essentially provisions and a few pieces of armor and weaponry. As for the supervision, it was more akin to leisurely wandering. Following 2 consecutive victories, the morale of the coalition was high, preventing any widespread negligence among the troops. Although there were still a few soldiers who were slacking off, after Jason publicly punished 2 of them, no one dared to be so brazen anymore. The punishment was quite straightforward, a slap across the face and a monetary fine. However, it was evident that the financial penalty was more distressing to them than the physical blow. At that moment, a rather diminutive man approached. "Greetings. May I inquire if you are Sir Vardis?" "No, I am not." "And you are?" Despite his stature, the man had a rather handsome face. "I am Peter Baelish." "Ah, so Littlefinger has truly arrived? You seem to be of similar age to me, and you don't appear to be severely injured. It seems Brandon has exaggerated." "Oh, do you seek my assistance for a particular matter?" Jason maintained an impassive facade while contemplating when he might find an opportunity to eliminate him. Should he proceed with such an act? After all, it was not deemed honorable. "Indeed, I possess a letter that I wish to deliver to the city of Riverrun. However, I am uncertain where to find the scholar from Saltpans. I have heard you are the captain of the Duke's Guard, thus I sought your assistance." As he spoke, he produced several silver stags and pressed them into Jason's hand. "Of course, I would not expect the captain to assist me without compensation. Consider this a small token of gratitude. I implore you to assist me." "Delivering a letter? Surely there is no ulterior motive involved?" "Very well. I shall do my utmost to assist you. However, the Duke also requires the services of the messenger Raven at present. Should it happen that he is sending a letter to Riverrun as well, I would be unable to assist you. That is only natural. I am exceedingly grateful." Peter adopted a humble demeanor and then retrieved a letter from his attire, handing it to Jason. Jason glanced at it. The envelope bore the inscription addressed to Caitlin Tully.